symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
What's happening? It is your boy, Conrad Thompson, Mr. Casio Kid, and you are tuned in to 83 Weeks with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Eric Bischoff. How are you, sir?
I'm so good, Casio. Always good to have you sit in for Mr. Thompson. We love Conrad, but when he's not around, great to have you here. You're always fun to talk to.
Thank you for having me, brother. Appreciate pinch hitting always. And I know that vacuum is a couple people sucking out of this episode because I'm here and not Conrad, but the ones that are with us are the good ones, I feel
and
like.
They're going to have fun.
They're going to have fun with us. We've got a great topic today. We've got the Dungeon of Doom, but before we get to that, Mr. Bischoff, I do want to commend you. I was excited. Love 83 Weeks, of course, but last week you guys did a topic, and I believe it's been brought up before. You brought up the No Limit Soldiers, and I was a huge No Limit Soldier mark. I had the chain. I've got still got the WCW jacket. I thought that was a great episode. It was a fun look back. And from what I've seen, Eric, you guys have got great feedback off that. It was fun to hear that whole process for me being a fan at that time.
Yeah, it was fun to do it. And it was something quite honestly that I'd forgotten about. It doesn't come up in conversation all that often, but it was like so much of the stuff that we did, Casio, that it was a little out of the box and didn't make much sense to, kind of traditional wrestling fans or the periphery media. But it was a fun experiment, and I enjoyed it, except for the part where I thought I was going to get shot. But except for that, it was really, really fun.
Full circle, when I moved to Los Angeles, and it's out there somewhere, when I moved to Los Angeles, one of my first acting gigs is I was in a Master P video, and I thought, well, buddy, I've made it in the business. I was such a fan of his before I moved out there that I thought, man, I've made it in the business. It is looking back on it now, Eric, the video is out there somewhere. I'm actually in the crowd, and it's the No Limit Soldiers in a basketball game versus the Ku Klux Klan. That is his music video, and I'm in the crowd, and I'll let you guess on which side I got cast for, but I'm on the bad side. Well, my favorite part, just production story, is first of all, they were all great. All the No Limit Soldier guys are great, talking to everybody, but none of us that they cast could play basketball whatsoever, so they had to actually get their crew to put on the sheets and play basketball against themselves.
So, how does that work? You got a bunch of black guys wearing...
They wore gloves. They wore gloves. They wore the sheets. They wore leggings, high socks.
And you shot them and they shot them from behind, right?
Yeah, so they're dunking and the whole deal. And they're playing against the real guy, the real No Limit Soldier guys. And then they would just, when they needed real Klan scenes, they would cut to us. They would cut to us grilling or whatever that, we had like the grill out there, like we're rednecks and the whole deal. I'm not going to remember the name of the song. I kind of burned it out of my memory. I thought it's one of those where you go, for the, early 2000s, I get it. And that would be like, what? It's not like it's hidden. It's on YouTube somewhere, but it was a crazy time, but it was funny for me being a young guy from Alabama. I go, one, I've already got stereotyped and cast as the Klan, but it's a No Limit Soldier music video. I've made it in life. And here we are. So it was fun listening to you guys recap that last week.
So how did you get that gig? Did you have an agent, or were you just like...
that one was, central casting, whatever. One of the casting deals where they just go, hey, we need rednecks or we need whatever. And they've already got your stuff in the system. So it's a lot of extra work, a lot of, you're sitting behind the scenes or whatever in a Friends episode or whatever the show was at the time. They would just go, hey, we need a redneck. So you might have show up on any of these, you might have one line, or you might have no lines and just sit in the back. So they were literally like, we need rednecks, and you'll be in a music video, a hip hop video, and you need to be the redneck. So of course, going in, like, I'm going to be fodder for something if I'm the redneck going into a hip hop video. And then we get there, and Master P's walking around. I'm like, boy, you can't tell me. I'm calling all my friends and family. We have made it now, son.
Did you get a chance to talk to him?
He just said hey to us, like he shook all of our hands, said hey, and the whole deal.
Because he's a really nice guy. He
was great. He helped direct it, because it was, he did the voice, but mainly we were there for all the actual footage shots, and they lip sync some of it while we're there, and so it's fun. You can never see my face. And now I think about it now, I'm like, thankfully, because my luck, I'd have a screenshot with the hood pulled up, and people
that would live forever, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
That would live forever.
But I am at a basketball game and on the court at some point. I am in the full game. But that was my favorite. We're like, wait, we got to play basketball? How's this going to work? Because they're going to smash us. Because the whole deal was like, it's like close till the end. Like the score is close. We're like, this is not going to be. How are you going to get any kind of footage? And then I see them, they come out, and all the hip-hop dudes, all the No-Limit dudes that are on the apparel, all suit up, gloves, high socks, white shoes, the whole deal. We're like, this is hilarious. And me being green from Alabama on any kind of production, I was like, this is Hollywood. This is my favorite moment.
I'm gonna have to look for that on YouTube. I gotta find it.
We do need to find out where the link is. It's up there on YouTube for sure. I've found it before. It was not a hit. That's going to shock everybody. Because, again, this was early 2000s. Like you said, the No Limit was, you guys, 90s.
But you don't know, after this conversation with the power of 83 weeks, there could be a resurgence in that YouTube video.
Man.
You're going to start trending again.
We need to screenshot their views before and then after the episode drops. All right, this week, first of all, before you get out of here, while you're here, go ahead and follow us on all platforms. Like, subscribe, give us those 5-star ratings wherever that is. Follow us on Twitter at @eBischoff. I'm at the Casio Kid, of course, at Hey It's Conrad. Show handle, of course, is at 83 weeks on all of your social media. And, of course, YouTube. Like, subscribe, turn on those notifications so you know every time a clip from 83 weeks with Eric Bischoff drops. And that is youtube.com/83 weeks. Let's start on this.
Casio, before we get going,
just
want to remind everybody, if you subscribe, and I encourage people to do it now, even though you've been listening, people tune in, but make sure you subscribe, because if you subscribe to 83 weeks, you're automatically going to get notified when we drop our newest podcast called Strictly Business.
Oh.
And it's going to be available on the 83 weeks feed. And so if you subscribe to 83 weeks, you'll get notified. It drops on Thursday afternoons. And so it should be out here shortly, I think around 5:00 Eastern. So you get 2 great podcasts for the price of one. Well, actually not even a price, because they're free. But Strictly Business. We started out on ad-free shows, and it just got so popular, and people wanted more and more and more. So we decided to go ahead and make it a straight up podcast. People can still get it. Those of you on adfreeshows.com, you're still going to get it on ad-free without any commercials. But we're a straight up podcast now, Strictly Business.
That's super cool. And, of course, we need to make sure we get the plug in. You have a book coming out, Mr. Bishop.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. It comes out tomorrow, actually. We're recording this on Thursday because I have to go to Atlanta on Friday. But yes, indeed. The book comes out on the 11th, or came out on the 11th. And it's called Grateful. And I'm really grateful for everybody that ordered it early at bischoffbook.com. Your signed copies will be on their way shortly, and anxious to see how it does.
All right, let's get into this. I'm grateful for this one. This is going to be a fun topic. A lot of fun stuff to dig into here. We have the Dungeon of Doom, Mr. Bischoff.
Fun for who?
Just your first gut reaction when you hear the phrase Dungeon of Doom.
Dread. because I know there's going to be a lot of questions and deservedly so. I mean, it was a weird time, and Derek Sabato, who does a lot of our research here and does a fine job. I think I saw a tweet that he posted the other day saying, I just put together the notes, and he wanted to know specifically whether or not we drug tested people in creative. And, we'll talk about that. But the answer to that is no.
Okay. Creative
but damn,
team not
I
on
wish
the
I would
wellness
have.
policy.
Because if there was ever an indication that drug testing was prudent, it would be the Dungeon of Doom.
Yeah, Dungeon of Doom would not have passed if there was a wellness policy.
No.
I suppose we need to start with how we began and got there with just the three faces of fear. Kevin Sullivan, John Tenta as Avalanche, and Ed Leslie, Brother Brutus, rechristened as the Butcher. How did you allow Kevin Sullivan to do this, or was this somebody else's idea, Eric?
No, it was Kevin, and look, in 2022, it's easy to look back at something in the late 90s and have fun with it or make fun of it. And it was over the top corny, right? And I get that, but it's important to kind of keep things in context. And by that, I mean, I don't know. Did you see what is that new series on Vice that Rock's company produces? Tales of the Territories or something along those.
Tales from the Territories.
Yeah. I saw an episode where Kevin Sullivan. It was about Florida. It was about the Florida Territory, and they really spent a lot of time talking about Kevin in that episode because Kevin was an important part of that territory back in the 80s. And Kevin's go-to thematically was always that kind of dark, evil. I don't want to say satanic, but yeah, kind of, sort of. That was his vibe, and it worked for him in that Florida territory back in the 80s. It was successful, on a limited basis in that territory. And I think, like a lot of us, myself included, others that I've worked with, you tend to kind of go back to what works for you or what has worked for you in the past, hoping that you can find a way to make it work again. And that happens all the time. How many times have we seen matches where, somebody pulls a finish out of their hat that harkens back to a famous finish from the 70s or the 80s or the 90s or whatever. So it's not unusual, and Kevin wasn't the only one that did it, but this was Kevin kind of going, and this was really before the NWO really took off, and it became obvious that the type of content that was resonating with the audience was getting it was less animated, less cartoonish. This was, the Dungeon of Doom was right in that transition from mid 90s to later 90s when the business really changed. And I say all that because for the rest of this episode, we're probably going to be beating the fuck out of this thing. But it's important that people understand that, back in whatever year this was, I don't even know, I probably 95, 96, 97, somewhere in there. This idea was dated, but not that dated. It was something that worked, 7 or 8 or 10 years earlier, which in the big scheme of things, you can find ideas and formulas that worked 10 years ago that if you figure out a way to tweak it a little bit, you can make it work today. And I see it all the time. We see it still today. There's not really any new ideas out there. They're just old ideas that are repackaged to feel like they're new. And this was an old idea that was repackaged that still felt like an old idea.
There's a saying in radio and in stand-up comedy. if you stole it from me, you've stolen it for the second time. It's kind of like some wrestling ideas. If you're taking that from me, you're really taking it from somebody else.
Yeah,
But like you said, the key is let's tweak it, make it our own, update it, whatever the case. Hey, that didn't work because of this, or it did. Let's try to recreate that. And again, like you mentioned, we're looking at this 25 years later. Yeah, we can. Hindsight's 2020. We can figure out a lot of things now.
Well, it was pretty stupid back then too. But here's
I tried to soften it up.
But and here's, when you mentioned like John Tenta, for example, John Tenta was a pretty big name in WWE, and John Tenta was also someone that Hulk Hogan knew, felt comfortable with, and believed, because again, going back to late 80s, early 90s, John Tenta, that larger than life 400-pound guy, those larger than life characters were what worked in WWE for a long time. So Hulk, like Kevin Sullivan, was more comfortable with things that he had success with previously. And that's why John Tenta was a part of that group. Butcher, Brother Brutus, the fucking barber, Beefcake, whatever we're going to refer to him at, Ed Leslie. If my last name was Leslie, I would change my name to something like Beefcake or Butcher too, right? Who wants to be called Ed Leslie? Well, clearly. I'm not going to comment further on that. But, obviously there was a very strong relationship between Hulk and Ed Leslie, the Butcher in this case. And I think Hulk, I shouldn't, let me rephrase that. I don't think Hulk wanted to try to find a place for Brutus. He was determined to do it. And I had to try to help make that happen. So when this idea came along, obviously the larger than life character, the threat to Hulk Hogan would be John Tenta, 400-pound monster of a human being that could, by the way, could go. He was a sumo wrestler and all that. It wasn't like he was just a big guy. He had some credibility behind him, even though the audience didn't really recognize it. And then Brutus, obviously, or Butcher in this case, there was just a level of trust there and familiarity, which is why Butcher was in there. And of course, Kevin, because he was the mastermind of it all.
Well, let's talk about it. Hogan pinned Butcher as the main event of Starrcade 94. I know you guys have talked about it before, but just a quick deal. Hogan pinned Butcher with 12 minutes and 7 seconds after a leg drop. The Observer says to retain the WWF WCW title, and he actually said this wasn't as bad as I'd expected with Butcher in there. They go back and forth. Of course, after the match, Randy Savage ran in and shook hands with the Faces of Fear, acting like they were going to ambush Hogan, but instead he turned on the heels and helped Hogan, and they shook hands and did the posing routine together. 3/4 stars for this match, but this is the main event for a Starrcade in the long legacy of Harley versus Rick, Dusty versus Rick, Rick versus Luger and Sting versus the Black Scorpion. Now we've got Brother Brutus.
I feel like I'm in a fight with Mike Tyson right now. I'm just getting hammered left, right, hooks, jabs, crosses, boom, uppercut. Down goes Bischoff. Down goes Bischoff. Yeah, it was horseshit. And again, I sound like I'm making excuses for it. I'm not really, I don't care anymore, not embarrassed by anything anymore, really. Well, that's not true. But in this case, Hulk was still new to WCW. He'd only really been in WCW since July. And Hulk was still a little concerned about the people that he worked with. And he wanted to work with people that he trusted and he knew. So sign up Ed Leslie. Not because anybody thought it was going to be a stellar pay-per-view, mind you. Other than maybe, Hulk probably thought. I think Hulk wanted it to work. And look, I make fun of Brutus a lot because he deserves it, and I don't think much of him as a person. His character's a little suspect to me, beyond suspect. But Hulk was really close to Ed Leslie, and the one thing about Hulk, and you can criticize him for it, and people do, but when he's loyal to somebody, he looks way beyond sometimes the obvious and is willing to take risks and try. And I think he wanted so badly to kind of create a good opportunity for Ed Leslie or Brutus. He wanted to help him find his way in WCW, and he was willing to put himself out there in a main event with him, knowing that there'd be a lot of criticism in order to try to prove a point or create an opportunity. And you know, I can fault that to a degree business wise. It's easy to make fun of that, not make fun of it, but it's easy to criticize that. But as a human being, I kind of respect it.
Was that a balance of, hey, we've got to get the best product out there, but we also got to make Hulk happy?
Yeah, but making Hulk happy, getting Hulk comfortable, letting him get his feet underneath him comfortably was probably as important as anything else. I mean, bringing Hulk Hogan in 1994 was a massive acquisition. And ultimately, it changed everything for WCW. It's one of the things that led us to becoming the number one wrestling company in the world for a brief period of time, a couple of years. But it didn't happen overnight, and it required that Hulk really felt at home and was engaged in the process. And part of that was managing Hulk. And that's one of the reasons why we let that happen.
Fast forward a month later, Clash of Champions, the Monster Maniacs. Hogan and Randy Savage defeated Sullivan and the Butcher, with Hogan pinning Butcher again. Was Hogan a fan of this creative and working with guys like Sullivan? I know we know he loved working with Brutus, but what are his thoughts working with Sullivan?
I think Hulk Kevin Sullivan was another one of those guys from Florida, from the Tampa area. Kevin came up in that territory, and Kevin and Hulk and Brian Blair and a lot of other guys were pretty tight back then. And I think again, it was a comfort level. It was helping Hulk get comfortable and working with people that he trusted, and Hulk trusted Kevin Sullivan, and rightfully so. Kevin wasn't the kind of guy that was going to get cute with you. Wrestling can be kind of treacherous. The people in it can be self-serving, to say the least. And it's the nature of the business. It's not necessarily a character flaw. It's the nature of the business, especially guys that came up in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s, even more so. But Kevin was one of those guys that, if Hulk looked him in the eye and Kevin said he was going to do something, Hulk believed 100% that Kevin was going to do everything he said he was going to do and not do things that he didn't say he was going to do. So there was a comfort level because it was familiarity.
As a fan watching this up until this point, than what we've viewed, Hogan has worked with monsters up to this point, slaying the monster. And Kevin Sullivan at this time, I guess a mythical monster, you could say. He's playing the psychological mind games instead of being the monster to be slayed. Did Hulk enjoy this? I'm the guy, I'm the big guy, and I've got to defeat this monster in front of it.
Yeah, exactly, Casio. And again, that was the formula that worked, that created Hulk Hogan. I mean, WWE in the early days was a monster factory. It created monster heels for Hulk Hogan to slay. That formula proved time and time and time again throughout the 80s and early 90s to be a successful formula. And was the reason why I think Hulk kept going back to that type of formula, creative formula, because it had proven successful and he was familiar with it. And it took a while. It wasn't until 96 really that Hulk started going, okay, I get it. There's a better way to do this. Times have changed. I don't think he said that consciously to himself, but I think subconsciously he knew it was time to change. But yeah, definitely. That's the reason. That's why John Tenta, Hulk wanted those monsters to slay.
You know what you need to slay, Eric Bischoff?
What's that?
That's your body hair. It's 2022. We need to get our body hair in check. And this holiday season, we're all going to be giving thanks to our friends over at MANSCAPED. Everyone loves turkey and stuffing, but you'll be looking like dessert with the help of MANSCAPED's Performance Package 4.0. Don't start. I'm going to lose it. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming. have blessed you with the ultimate Thanksgiving dinner topic. Tell your in-laws about your new cutting-edge ball trimmer and gift yourself or the man in your life the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Trim your pumpkins by going to manscaped.com and use code 83weeks for free shipping and 20% off. If you think your holiday spread is good, it's time to give thanks to the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, or as I like to call it, the perfect package for your package. Inside, you're going to find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. Think of it as a cornucopia for your balls, Eric. Their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. It also gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when you need a more precise shave. Plus, it's waterproof. And I will be openly honest, Conrad Thompson got me the Weed Whacker for Christmas last year.
Do you use it?
I love it. It has changed our life. He sat over there and I saw him using his, sitting there watching wrestling. And I said, "Are you trimming your ear hair as we talk?" And he said, "Oh yeah, this has changed the game." And I said, "Well, I don't need it." And my wife looked over and said, "Yeah, you do." So he got me one. And of course, this chops up your worst weeds up top in your nose and your ear. This nose and ear hair trimmer uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual-blade system to provide proprietary skin-safe technology which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate
You know why I love Manscaped, especially the Weed Whacker? Because as you can tell, my hair's like, it's not even like, it's just white.
Okay.
I lost gray a long time ago. It's just fucking white. But when you have hair that's as white as mine,
Yeah.
and then your nose hair starts turning gray, it's like like when my nose hair was black, you know, people didn't notice it too much, right? If you had a little bit of nose hair in there, you didn't really trim it up. It was no big deal, right?
Yeah, your nostrils are dark anyway.
Yeah, it's not noticeable. But when it's like this color, and you walk into a room and, you know, somebody may be a little shorter than you, and they look up at you and all they see is, you know, white hair jumping out of your nose. It's like embarrassing. So I love it for that because I can make sure that I don't have a bush growing in my nose.
Sign. Neon.
And the safety
neon
feature for the rest of the products, you know, the first time I tried to shave my balls, I used a regular razor, and I didn't feel anything, but I nicked my nuts pretty good in the shower, and you know, I'm whacking away and everything's great. And I washed my hair and I looked down and it looked like somebody gutted a goat in my shower stall. There was just blood everywhere. So I was so grateful when Manscaped became a sponsor, and I got my first sample to try out. It was like, yes.
That's a Kevin Sullivan storyline, gutting a goat. That's a dark satanic stuff. Plus, here's what I'm excited about. I don't know if you've tried them or not. I have not, but I can't wait to. They've got Manscaped's new liquid formulations, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant and Crop Reviver, Eric. Woo!
Yeah, you need that too as you get older. You're not old enough yet to really feel the need for that, but as you get a little bit older and all of a sudden, you know, the bells are swinging a little lower than they used to, you know, and you sit down in a toilet and all of a sudden, oh man, that's cold and deep. Holy crap. So, yeah, that's how you fix that, man.
Well, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant and the Crop Reviver toner spray, they are like pumpkin pie and ice cream after Thanksgiving dinner. You can't live without it. Your balls will be living in turkey heaven with these formulations. And if this wasn't enough, it's time to do the dishes with Manscaped shower products. Lather some of Manscaped's refined body wash on their brand new signature body buffer and give yourself the lather and rinse your body deserved. Lose the loofah and exfoliate your mates. No hygiene routine is complete without Manscaped's signature deodorant as well. A couple swipes of this and you'll be feeling oh so crisp. Gifting Manscaped, by the way, is the ultimate hack to become the family favorite. I just told you, Conrad Thompson gave it to me last Christmas, and it changed my life. You can do it for your friends as well. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code 83weeks at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code 83weeks. 83 weeks. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift of all from Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. All right, let's get back to the Dungeon of Doom. We've got...
I'd rather just stick with Manscaped, to be honest with
you. Sullivan and Butcher lose again to the Mega Powers on an episode of WCW Worldwide. A short while later, Sullivan attacks Butcher and gives him a pile driver on the stage at the Disney MGM studios after they lose a match to Stars and Stripes. This pile driver was so devastating that Butcher began to suffer from amnesia and would now be known creatively as the Man with No Name. The Man with No Name, Eric. Can you claim right here and right now that this is where the drug policy would have been in effect for the creative team?
Actually, have you ever met Ed Leslie?
I have, yes.
This was a perfect character for him. Because he didn't know it, but he'd been, like a method actor. He'd been preparing for this role for the majority of his life. So it was probably the most natural character that Ed Leslie ever played was the Man with No Name who had amnesia, because he could just walk around being an idiot and everybody thought it was part of his character. Whereas in real life, people say, oh, he's an idiot.
I actually met him at StarCast because he was in his room and could not find his way down to the vendor room. And
isn't he a brilliant individual?
I had to go get him. I'm just going to leave it with that. I'll just say this. It reminds me of a certain scene in Tropic Thunder. I'm not going to say it, but we'll talk about it later. The Man with No Name. Well, the Man with No Name would go on to lose to Sullivan at Slamboree 95 in May. After the matches, Sullivan has announced the victor. A mysterious figure appears on the video wall, telling Sullivan to come forth, my son. Sullivan leaves to the crowd, seemingly to find this mysterious guy who appears to be in some gloomy cave setting. The man, of course, is former King Curtis, known as the Master.
Now, you're talking about two weird dudes here. King Curtis, who, by the way, was a really nice guy. I had a chance to spend a little time with him and met him in Hawaii. The first time I met him was in Hawaii, and I'm going to tell you that story because it defines everything that happened afterwards. So I'm going to Hawaii for something. It was business, and Kevin was with me. I think we were on our way to, I think we were meeting with New Japan on some things, or it was just an excuse for the Japanese to come to Hawaii, an excuse for me to go to Hawaii instead of me going to Japan or them come all the way to the States. We went, oh, let's just meet halfway because fucking Hawaii. And Kevin and I get off the plane. I think my wife was with me and my kids, and Kevin was with us. And we're going through the Honolulu airport. And if memory serves me right, we were on the second level or a third level. And Curtis was down below, right? And all of a sudden, I hear, Kevin, my son. I go, what the fuck? I had never met King Curtis before. Didn't know anything about him. But this just bellowing voice that filled the entire airport. People stopped and they're looking around and grabbing their children, and they weren't sure what was happening. And I was a little confused, and I looked at Kevin, and Kevin goes, Father! At the top of his voice. He's sitting right next to me. Now, these two were bellowing like two bulls, in different bullpens. Kevin, my son! Father! Father, where are you, Father? That's Father if you're from Boston. And it was like a mating call between two moose. And it went on for about 3 or 4 minutes. And finally, we got down the escalator and there was Curtis and they hugged. And yeah, that was my first impression of King Curtis. Kevin!
Big dude. He's like Conrad size, right? He's like 6'4", 300, like big dude.
Yeah, he was all of 300. And, he wasn't, he was older and he wasn't that healthy. So he had a hard time getting around and all that. But super nice guy. Just,
So,
you'd notice him in an airport. Let's put it that way.
so is that why he shows him for this? He's buddies with Kevin, and Kevin thinks we need another ominous figure.
Yeah, another ominous figure. And I mean, he is kind of frightening. I mean, he probably played that role really well.
Yeah.
Because if you can just take the ridiculousness of the Dungeon of Doom and put it aside, and if you think about casting someone in a movie, who is this big, scary, evil kind of Wizard of Oz character, King Curtis was the right guy for that.
He obviously had the unique look, but had not been involved in wrestling, like you said, in a while. His last time was managing Kamala and Siga back in 1987 in the WWF. So this is
nice.
We've had a minute here. The quest to end Hulkamania is not over. Oh no, we're just getting started. A couple of weeks later, on the 6/3 edition of WCW Saturday Night, we're shown a vignette of Sullivan running through the woods in just his wrestling trunks and boots as he is following the voice of the Master. Sullivan then disappears when he seemingly finds the Master's silhouette in the clouds, parts unknown, if you will.
Okay, this is where Sabato probably went, did you drug test these people?
No, he did that. He did that earlier.
Was there acid involved in this?
You could probably insert that question a few times in this.
Maybe some mushrooms, because mushrooms are fun. I've done mushrooms. They're kind of a gas, and you might come up with an idea like this if you happen to be tripping on some really good mushrooms. I don't know.
But when you're seeing the pitch of this, you personally, and you're seeing the pitch of this, and now we're seeing the vignettes being recorded, are you saying, man, this is our chance to take down Vince? We got this going down. What's going down?
No, I mean, I've never been a big fan. Even, that clip that we just saw a moment ago of King Curtis when he was managing Kamala in 1987, which was only 7 years before this. I mean, this is goofier looking than Dungeon of Doom, or at least as goofy.
I'll give you that.
And it was only 7 years prior to this, only 7 years. But in the big scheme of, pulling wrestling ideas out of your hat, 7 years was like yesterday. But it wasn't my thing. I didn't, I've said this often on this podcast, my wrestling fandom before I got into the industry, when I was in my teens, early teens, mid-teens, late teens, even early 20s. I like Nick Bockwinkel. I like Ray Stevens. I like Wahoo McDaniel. I like guys that wrestled. Ivan Putski, the Crusher, Dick the Bruiser. Those. And Ivan Putski was a little bit cartoonish, even for that time. But I like guys, especially guys like Nick Bockwinkel, young Kurt Hennig. Man, those were my favorites. And this was just too animated for me. But look, in 1994, 1995, early 95, I had zero interest. Not that I had zero interest. I had zero confidence in my creative instincts or abilities. I didn't want to try to get involved in an aspect of the business that I had absolutely no experience in or feel for. I knew I didn't have a feel for creative back then. And I didn't want to be one of those guys just because I was the boss that, was engaged in the process without having the confidence to stand up for the things that I believe or shut down the things that I felt strongly against. And I also was of the mindset, and still am to this day, I've refined this a little bit, but just because I don't like something doesn't mean it's a bad idea. The wrestling audience is pretty diverse. Everybody has different styles, different aspects of wrestling that they enjoy for whatever reason. A lot of it has to do with the way they grew up and the things that they liked when they were younger. And I never liked the overly animated, goofy shit. Never, even before I got into the business. But after I was in the business, I also understood that just because I didn't like it doesn't mean other people didn't. And we tried a lot of things. I threw a lot of things up against the wall or allowed other people to throw things against the wall, whether I liked it or not. And, it's kind of the learning process. I was learning on the job, and The creative aspect of it was one of the last, I knew a lot about the wrestling. I knew a lot about probably knew more about the business of the wrestling business when I took over WCW than just about anybody other than probably Vince and Linda McMahon. The talent, you look at the big names, the Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan knew a lot about being Hulk Hogan and probably knew more about the business of the wrestling business than most, because Hulk was so engaged in licensing and merchandising and things like that a lot of top talent wasn't. Hulk had probably a little better feel than most, but the average talent never had to deal with the business of the wrestling business. They just had to deal with being a great performer in the ring and understanding psychology and understanding the audience, and understanding their character, understanding syndication, understanding the pay-per-view business model, understanding all of the different things about the business of the wrestling business was, and still is to this day, alien to most performers because they don't have to deal with it. It's not their deal. And it cracks me up today when I hear top talent and talent that's been around for a long time, giving their opinions about the business of the wrestling business when none of them have been within a mile of it. It's like me trying to tell a performer how to be a good wrestler and critiquing their technical skill in the ring. Well, fuck, I've never done that. I know what I like, know what I don't like, but it doesn't mean I know what I'm talking about. And the same is true, I think, on the business to business side. Most wrestling talent have zero clue about the business of the wrestling business. And I knew what I didn't know back then. I knew I didn't know creative. I didn't want to try to pretend I did. I didn't want to force my way in. I just kind of said, all right, let's throw that up against the wall. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll go do something else.
First of all, I agree with what you just said. And 2 points I'll make, which nobody cares about, my humble opinion. But one, in all creative / entertainment, there's not a lot of people who've thrown nothing but perfect games in the entertainment world where everything is a success. You can have guys who are overwhelmingly successful, but that's part of entertainment and being creative is we have to have ideas continually. And even more so in the wrestling business of we're doing this week to week. We have to keep going, sometimes more times than once a week. And so you're going to have ideas that just don't stick, but you don't know some of those until you throw it out. And two, to your point, I do co-host the show with Road Dogg, Oh You Didn't Know podcast. And he says it to me all the time. I ask him questions about his time in TNA or his time, anytime he's been brought back to another promotion. And he says it to me straight up all the time. I wasn't paying attention to the business part of that, which he's in a role now, which is sure. Ironic. But he says, I was worried about, here's what I'm going to do when I go out, and when does my check arrive? And that, he says, he says it all the time too. I wish I would have been more involved in the business side of it and paid attention to everything you just laid out. But there's, like you said, there's a lot of them and a lot of big guys too.
A lot of big names
that had no interest in it whatsoever.
The only thing they knew is what they read in the dirt sheets.
Yeah. A week later, when we go back to this, and Sullivan was found in a cave, the Dungeon of Doom, if you will. I don't know if that's the Iron Gates of Fate where they were built from as well. The Master had enlisted the evil of Sullivan to end Hulkamania, and that is etched in stone. The following week.
They look pretty. Now, if you're not following along on adfreeshows.com, you can't see our video or our clips, but we just saw a clip of King Curtis and Sullivan together in the cave, and they both look really happy. Does that look like happy?
The maniacal laughter.
That looks like you and Conrad whenever we rent an Airbnb together after a couple gummies.
we ask a couple questions that make people feel awkward and then do that laugh against each other. Who's who? Who's King Curtis? Am I King Curtis? Or is Conrad?
No, Conrad's King Curtis.
Conrad's the larger than life. Yeah. Ominous figure. All right. The following week, June 17th, the Master encourages Sullivan to take the final step. Sullivan then enters a separate room of the dungeon and comes back out calling the Master Father, like you said. So this is funny that this is their ongoing joke anyway, and now they're bringing it in. Father is in here. They do this all the time. The Master christens Sullivan as the Taskmaster, who's now wearing a red and yellow outfit with what appears to be horns painted on his face. And like we said in the pictures we just showed, they laugh with evil intentions that they will end Hulkamania. By the way, kids out there, we're not making any of this shit up. As you saw by the footage, this really happened. This is by far the biggest push in Sullivan's career. And as you guys discussed a couple weeks ago, Eric, here he is opposite of the Hulkster. Whose idea was it coming up with the cast of characters? Did Sullivan pitch to people? Was Hulk involved in any of this? On the dungeon side.
If this is 94.
Yeah.
Early 95, 94.
June 94.
I think, and I can't remember, to be honest with you, but it was either Dusty booking at the time or Ric Flair.
Really?
Yeah, because Ric was a booker for a while. And I don't know if Ric was booking during this time or not. I really just can't remember it all. It just blends together for me. After a couple decades, it's hard to keep track. And I can't remember what I did yesterday, so that makes it even harder. We need to get Prevagen as a sponsor here. You know, that's
for memory?
Yeah, if you take that, it makes your memory better. I need some of that shit. We need to work on that. Somebody call Dave Green. Tell him to get on that Prevagen.
Come on, Podcast 8.
But whether Dusty was still there or Ric was there at the time, or even whether it was Kevin, I don't know. It would have been Kevin and Hulk kind of laying this out and talking about the characters and all that. I would have been kind of on the sidelines watching it.
Well, look, as you can see from me, I don't have the painted on eyebrows. A lot of people don't even think I have eyebrows. They think I might shave them. I don't. They're just blonde. They're just lightly colored. I don't shave my eyebrows. As you can tell, I do shave my head, Eric Bischoff. And that's why I'm excited that you guys have Henson Shaving as an advertiser right now. Henson Shaving, man, you have got to meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that has made parts for the ISS, that's the International Space Station. I am from Huntsville, the Rocket City. All of my coworkers, including my wife, will work for all these International Space Stations and the Mars rover. And now this company, they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. Razor blades are like diving boards, Eric. The longer the board, the more the wobble, and the more the wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave isn't a blade problem. It's an extension problem. And all these engineered parts, by using aerospace-grade CNC machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just, how about this, 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. That means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. Plus, it gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. Seriously, Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, and no planned obsolescence. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edge blades to give you and that old-school shave with the benefits of new-school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. Eric, as people are viewing on YouTube, I don't shave my chin. I do shave my head. You shave on a regular basis, and me and you in front of the camera a lot. The worst thing you can think of is having a big old nick or cut on your face while you're about to record something on your podcast. That's why Henson is big time.
And I've done that. You know, I've been to autograph signings or conventions or whatever, and I procrastinate. You know, it's one of my flaws. One of many. I have a lot. But I procrastinate. So, you know, I get up at the last minute, jump in the shower. I'm in a hurry now, and I'm shaving in the shower. And boom, Same thing. It's like the Manscaped spot I talked to you about. I'm shaving. You don't feel it when it happens, but you're in there and it's hot and it's steamy and you come out and, you know, it looks like you went through a windshield. And I've done that so many times. And here's what I do, because I never care. Remember those old Steptic pencils? I don't know what that stuff was, but if you cut yourself shaving, you put that little pencil thing on your cut, and it stung like hell, but it would stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
I haven't seen one of those since 1967, like in a drugstore or anything. So when I'm in, you know, a Comfort Inn on my way down to the car so they can take me over to sign autographs, and I jump out of the shower, I'm bleeding like a stuck pig. What do? I take a little piece of paper towel or napkin or toilet paper, whatever, wad it up a little more, lick it with my finger, stick it right wherever I'm cut. And I go down there and I got this big old white thing on my lip and people are looking at you like, what the fuck, dude? And it starts to bleed through a little bit and everybody goes, oh, he cut himself shaving. Henson shaving doesn't happen. And I got mine the other day, like 3 days ago. They sent me mine in the mail to try. And I had about a week and a half's growth on, and I only shave about once a week when I'm home alone and I'm not traveling or seeing people. And I thought, well, this will be a test because my beard's pretty thick and heavy, and no problem, no nicks, no cuts. It was pretty cool. And the thing I like about it, it's like that old double-edged razor like my dad had.
Yeah.
I kind of dig that. It's like old school, but it's new school, and I dig it. I love the technology.
Old school with the new tech. And look, if you've been paying attention to the news or just living life, you know it everywhere. Everybody's talking about high gas prices. Interest rates are up. Inflation is the thing everybody's worried about. And what we're talking about, once you own that razor, talk the affordability of just $3 to $5 a year to replace the blades a year. $5 a year.
Yeah, it's not like going into, you know, your local, you know, CVS or Walgreens or any other drugstore. You go in there and you're looking for a razor because you forgot to pack yours, and they're so freaking expensive. They put them behind glass.
They're locked up.
Like you got to go find somebody with a key to get to them.
Yes.
Because they're like $40 a pack.
Yes.
It's crazy.
And it's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that'll last you a lifetime. Visit HensonShaving.com/83 weeks to pick the razor for you and use code 83 weeks, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure you add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to HensonShaving.com/83 weeks. HensonShaving.com/83 weeks to use code 83 weeks to get that deal. Incredible deal. And we appreciate Henson's Shaving for sponsoring 83. All right, back to the timeline. Next week on 6/24, the Master has the first surprise for his Taskmaster. Why, it's the Ugandan giant, the mighty Kamala. He appears through a plume of smoke, slapping his belly as Sullivan laughs in his evilness. You understand now why so many people look back at this time in WCW and say that Hulk is just bringing people in for him to beat and that he felt comfortable working with, right? Like you touched on earlier, you got to make the big guy happy.
Well, not only that, but again, I don't want to be redundant, but you know, you go back to what you knew. You go back to what worked before, and you keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore, and you find something else that works. And this was Hulk going back to something that worked before, trying to change it up a little bit, and it just didn't work, man. The times had changed. The audience changed. The audience's appetite had changed. And we found that out the hard way.
On July 1st, we're back in the dungeon, and Vader seemingly refuses the offer to join the Dungeon of Doom, or does he? Kevin Sullivan and the Master are discussing Vader, with the Master saying Vader could be an ally. Vader then appeared with Sullivan saying they were sending Vader on a roadkill tour to prove that he was on his way to facing Hogan at Bash at the Beach. Vader then said he feared nothing and walked off, and Sullivan later laughing after saying Vader would have to get the job done against Hogan alone. Was there ever talk of putting Vader in the Dungeon of Doom, or was that just a little bit of keep the storyline going for an extra week?
No, I think it was more of keeping the storyline going. I don't think anybody, I mean, there may have been some discussion at some point in time, hey, what if, or
Yeah.
what if I got an idea, brother? I knew it would take Vader, and we put him in the dungeon and tell him, oh, fuck. Yeah, there might have been some of that going on, but I don't think anybody was talking about it seriously.
Well, let's double down if we can hit this a little bit. Next week, another new member enters the dungeon, and it's not even a human being, Eric. It's a large fish. That's right. A shark attack has arrived, who is, of course, the former Avalanche, John Tenta. In fact, he's arrived here on a tidal wave from the South China Sea to Waikiki, and his jaws have been watering to get a taste of Hulkamania. Because it's etched in stone, Eric, as we zoom out to his statue of Hogan, actually etched in stone. By the way, yeah, look at that. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that statue. By the way, Tenta has a tiger tattooed on his arm and actually got it covered over with, you guessed it, a shark. And this was actually his own suggestion. What a commitment to the new gimmick, Eric.
John Tenta was a good guy. You know, I mean, it's easy. Again, it's easy to go back and make fun of a stupid idea from the mid-90s, but the people involved were good people. I didn't know Curtis all that well, but Kevin is a good guy. He's a good human being. And John Tenta was the salt of the earth. Just a sweet, sweet guy and easy to work with. That being said, this was fucking horrible. But to John's credit, man, he was willing to do whatever it took to try to make it work.
I'm going to say, isn't that the sign of somebody that's going to help the company? Is we've given you a new gimmick, and whatever you think about it. I mean, my man got a tattoo over his other one. That's commitment to, I'm going to do everything I can to make this thing work.
Yep, and you got to respect a guy like that. I do.
A day later on WCW Main Event, Vader returns to the dungeon wearing his old Big Van Vader armor helmet and vows to win the WCW title and destroy Hulkamania at Bash at the Beach as the two masters wickedly laugh. Vader is essentially a hired hitman for the dungeon and not an official member. And oh boy, are things going to get better, as on July 15th, the ZODIAC has arrived. That's right, the former man with no name, former Butcher, former Brother Bruti, former Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake. Eric, what's a ZODIAC?
Dude, I don't know, but after seeing these clips Steve Kaufman keeps putting up as we're going through this, these images, I honestly want to smoke some weed and go back and watch some of the stuff on Peacock. I really do. I just think it would be hilarious.
Pull that up in 94, hit you a gummy or hit one of those little bongs right there and check out the ZODIAC. Vader ends up losing to Hogan in a cage match at Bash at the Beach the following night. The Taskmaster and ZODIAC do attempt to interfere at one point, but are stopped by Hogan's corner man for the night. Dennis Rodman is their corner man. Surprising to me, of course, that this appearance by Dennis is just not well remembered. I didn't remember it until I saw it in the notes. Do you think it's just because of the growth of WCW by the time that he joined the NWO? We don't remember this. We just remember that other part.
No, well, he was just in the corner. We didn't publicize it a lot. It wasn't part of a big angle. It wasn't really a part of a storyline. It was just, hey, Dennis Rodman's available and he'd love to help out. And Dennis was a big Hulk Hogan fan, and Dennis was kind of a big deal at the time, so we just took advantage of it. But clearly, Dennis made a much bigger impact a couple of years later.
Yeah. The next week on WCW Saturday Night, Hogan is going to enter the Dungeon of Doom himself to confront the Taskmaster. Hulk's acting is incredible here. First, he trips up as he enters through the smoke. I mean, it's smoky. Everybody's going to trip it. The mysterious cave. Where am I? There's no Hulkamaniacs in here. I've never been here before. Hulk then touches the water fountain and yells, it's not hot. What is this place? Sullivan then confronts Hogan, saying this is where evil lies and that Hogan's demise is etched in stone. Meltzer wrote about the segment. Well, by the way, we should get to this. The giant Paul Wright is now in the Dungeon of Doom with this segment. The giant figure breaks through the etched in stone statue of Hogan and then chokes him out and he calls himself the true, real immortal and the greatest giant on earth. Wright has made a few sporadic appearances prior to this, including stalking and throwing a shirt at Hogan at the pregame show before Bash at the Beach. But this was his first physical role. The Giant is also dressed to look like Andre with the same wrestling outfit. Meltzer wrote about the segment. The 7/22 Saturday Night Show had perhaps the all-time most poorly acted and dumbest skit in history, with Hulk Hogan visiting the Dungeon of Doom. He said, to make matters worse, for the rest of the show, the announcers never acknowledged what happened, probably due to personal embarrassment, but you were left with the idea that Hogan was dead after the chokeout. Anyway, they've got Dungeon and Doom segments booked on the Saturday show at least through October, which should make this Saturday show a shoe-in for several Emmy Awards by the end of the year.
I usually can't stand listening to Dave Meltzer commentary because it's usually so fucking stupid. And he's he's not the brightest bulb in the tree, but, and again, has no real understanding of the business, but pretends he does. But he's absolutely right about this. I mean, I can bust his balls all day long and point to a million things that he said that were lies or distortions or just incorrect. But not this time. He's on the money.
Now, after we move forward later in July, Hulk has finally said it's time to come. His time has come to rise and face the challenge of the Giant again. And to do so, he will have to fight through the entire Dungeon of Doom starting next week on Main Event. He brought up the match with Andre at the Pontiac Silverdome. So the Giant is alluded to as the son of Andre. Yep. Listen, out of all the things WCW did wrong with the Dungeon of Doom, Giant as the son of Andre is a pretty big mess up here. What's your thoughts? What do you remember pitching this as he's going to be the son of Andre?
I didn't pitch it. It was pitched to me. And I didn't dig it. I didn't dig it. That was
the way to say it politely.
Yeah, I'm trying really hard to be.
I didn't dig it.
I'm trying really hard to be kind here. It was a bad idea. It was a fucking horrible idea. It just was. But I went along with it for reasons that we've already discussed. But it was so bad. It was just so bad.
I can't wait for the Conrad to break out and you the I didn't dig it t-shirt, possibly. Yeah, I didn't dig it.
No, not a bit.
The 8/6 main event is a special live episode before that evening's Clash of Champions special. Hulk Hogan beat Kamala via DQ in a non-title match in 4 minutes and 36 seconds. Technically pretty bad, says the Observer, but the match had heat because of Hogan, and it was fast-paced because of how short it lasted. Same storyline as always. Hogan started out fast. Kamala took over when Kevin Sullivan interfered. Hogan kicked out of the big splash and made the Superman comeback, finishing with a foot to the face that looked like crap and a leg drop. At this point, Sullivan was on the top rope and Hogan slammed him to the mat, and Zodiac and Shark did a run-in for the DQ until Sting and Randy Savage made the save. Putting Hogan on the main event is a hell of a way to draw an audience for the Clash, but it's Kamala, Hulk in 1995. This is something. I mean, we've touched on it. You're not really pumped at this point in 95.
No, it was one of those storylines and one of those angles that I was just hoping. I just wanted to get through it. Let's just get through this. I wasn't going to throw a flag. Again, I don't know if it was Kevin booking by himself or if it was Kevin and Rick or Dusty was still there. I don't remember. But whoever it was, I was just hoping they'd get through this and get through it, get it over with, and move on to the next idea. It wasn't like I was going to throw a flag and put a stop to it and just wipe everything off and pretend it never happened and start a whole new storyline. You can't really do that either, even if you want to.
Let's talk about this. Later in the Clash itself, Hogan returns to the Dungeon of Doom after first doing an interview at this point, talking about how the Irish people like the O'Reillys and the Hogans and the McMahons were all shaking in their boots or something because of the power of Hulkamania. I'm sure there have been moments when they were, but I hardly think at this point on this show it was one of them. The Giant ripped off his cross, which was exactly what Andre the Giant did in 1987. Started choking him while Shark, Zodiac, and Sullivan all attacked Hogan. Vader, Sting, and Savage showed up with Vader cleaning house on the heels of forearms, except the Giant wasn't even fazed by his forearms. The Faces dragged Hogan out and pulled Vader away as he did a stare down with the Giant, who they are saying is the son of Andre, according to the Observer. It's a vehicle to get over one of the young homegrown stars for WCW, Eric, and it fits. But was this the original plan all along? Do you remember?
I think so, or something close to it. Plans always change all the way up until the time the bell rings, and sometimes even after the bell rings. But essentially, yeah, it was the idea.
The following, Hogan confronted Vader, wanting to know the deal with him saving him. And as they both have a common enemy in the Dungeon of Doom, Hogan convinces Vader to join him for War Games at Fall Brawl in September to take down the Dungeon. Vader agrees as long as he gets a future title shot. Of course, we don't get to see Vader being part of Team Hogan, as Vader is going to be put out of WCW within the next few weeks following his backstage fight with Paul Orndorff on August 30th. Vader versus the Yeti is a main event anywhere in the country, right, Eric?
That would have been awesome. Can you imagine the fun? Can you imagine the fun dirt sheet writers would have had with that?
Vader and Yeti. The balance of power is about to shift drastically as the Dungeon ups the ante on 8/19 with another new member, Ming. And Ming is brought into the Dungeon Cave wearing what appears to be a dragon's head and has a golden spike on his thumb. And at the first Nitro on 9/4, Hogan defeated Big Bubba. And after the bout, we have the amazing sight of Kamala, the Zodiac, Shark, and Ming running through the Mall of America to attack Hogan.
Can you imagine that? Better yet, the Mall of America was still kind of a new thing in Minnesota. It was, billed as the largest, mall in the world.
Oh.
Or at least in the United States or North America or some shit. So there were people coming, and it was located real close to the airport. So people would come to Minneapolis and go, oh, we got to go to the Mall of America. It's a destination. People from all over the world want to come and see this big, beautiful mall. That was when malls still mattered. And can you imagine, some family coming up from Mexico or somebody coming over from Europe that didn't know anything about WCW or professional wrestling, and they're going through the mall and they're doing some shopping, thinking about gifts for their family and friends. And then you get this group of animals, running through the crowd. Honey, put down that stereo, put down that headphone. We got to get the fuck out of here. People are crazy in Minnesota.
There's a giant man shark for some reason over here. I don't know.
Wearing a leotard.
The Zodiac and Ming, everybody's painted up. This is pretty amazing. And plus, as we go on we've got Luger making the save, which next week leads to him ending up on Hogan's team to take on the Dungeon at War Game. On the pre-show, we have this. This is super fun. The main event show opened with a poorly acted angle from the Observer, where Hogan showed up at the building with the motorcycle given to him in Los Angeles, surrounded by a dozen people paid to act like his fans. The Giant then showed up driving a Dungeon of Doom monster truck and ran over the motorcycle. This is to set up a monster truck battle at Halloween Havoc, where the Dungeon of Doom monster truck faces the Hogan monster truck. And the Observer ends with, I'm not making this up. I know you've mentioned it. You hated the cartoon nature of the product of WWF. You had to hate this shit.
It was my idea.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
that's what I needed.
Look, the characters and the Dungeon of Doom and all that shit, that wasn't my idea. But the monster truck battle, that's on me. I did that dumb shit.
I should have known when I saw motorcycle, Eric's involved, and now monster truck. I mean, because on the surface, and as a fan, as a young man, you should think, We got motorcycles and monster trucks and wrestling. What screams better to us?
No, but now again, this is the business of the wrestling business or the business of the entertainment business. My son at this time, I don't know how old he was, 10, 8, whatever. And he loved monster trucks. I was never a fan of monster trucks, but my kid is, right? He's 8 or 10 years old. He wants to go see monster trucks with his friends. So I tell him he can invite all his friends. I'm going to take him to wherever it was, Omni or whatever it was in Atlanta. And we're going to go see monster trucks. And I thought, well, this is going to be hard for me, but I'll sit here because it's my son and his friends, and I'll put up with it. It's like if my wife said she wanted to go to the opera, I wouldn't necessarily do that on my own, but if my wife wants to go, I'm going to go.
Right.
So I take my kid, Garrett, and his friends, and I go, whatever, Georgia Dome or whatever it was, or whatever the venue was. And I get there, and it's this huge, huge venue. And it's about 65 or 75% full. And I just bought 5 tickets, and I know how much money they were getting for their tickets. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's some business here. This monster truck stuff, it's not my cup of tea, but holy crap. I'm trying to count the people in the venue, and there's just too many of them. I'm doing math in my head, and I'm thinking, we got to figure out a way to make this work. Now, cut to, that was about 2 years before this. Now there's all this crazy stuff going on, Dungeon of Doom and Hogan, and I'm thinking, God, what if we could have a sumo monster truck battle? Like, what if we could figure out a way to do that? Like, nobody else has done that, for good reason, but nobody else has done that at this point. So I reached out to the guys down in, I think they were in St. Louis, that were running Bigfoot. Bigfoot was like the Stone Cold Steve Austin of the monster truck business, right? Bigfoot was the money maker in that world. So I found the guys that were in that business and ran and owned Bigfoot. And I went down and said, here's what I want to do. I want to have like a demolition derby sumo monster truck battle as a part of my pay-per-view. How do you do that? And I said, oh, we can figure that out. Just, have the trucks, face off and look like they're jockeying, for position. And there'll be a lock. There'll be a device that once they bump uglies, once they, mash together in the front, they'll automatically be locked together and they can have like a Bigfoot monster truck sumo match. And I'm thinking, great. Now, if we could put that on the top of Kobo Arena, because that's where the next pay-per-view is. And I said, yeah, we could do that. You just take soapy water or water with a little bit of glycerin or whatever it is they use so that the trucks end up in the Detroit River. Yeah, we can do that. So we practice it, and he set it up, and they built the whole deal, and they built the trucks for us. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, keep in mind, WCW had 0 licensing and merchandising at this point. WWE was printing money in licensing and merchandising. WCW had 0. Nothing. Not a nickel. And I'm thinking, well, we got to fix that shit. I need me some licensing and merchandising. So let's come up with this monster truck sumo match so that we can launch ourselves, so to speak, into the monster truck business. And then we can take these licensed WCW character monster trucks and put them on the monster truck tour. So you'd have a Hulk Hogan truck, and you'd have a Sting truck and a Lex Luger truck. And on paper, that made a lot of sense. From a business perspective, it made a ton of sense and actually still does. From a creative point of view, however, not so much.
What? When did you know it wasn't? When did you know it wasn't hitting like you thought?
That night.
Oh no.
No, I mean, the guys
just from feedback or watching it yourself, you went, this ain't working.
Yeah, feedback. I wouldn't say that night. I was pretty excited about it that night. It was in the weeks following. Just the audience was just like, it's a little too far. Like Dungeon of Doom wasn't far enough. The monster trucks were more real than Dungeon of Doom, but for whatever reason, mixing monster trucks and wrestling was just oil and water for the audience. Didn't work.
Well, look, here's the deal. Here's what me and you can agree on, because we both experienced, we both can give the right feedback, Eric, and that is Miracle Brand sheets, because winter is here, and that means struggling to find the right temperature when you go to sleep. And we recently found a way to stay at the perfect temperature all night long using silver-infused bed sheets by Miracle Brand that were inspired by NASA. Again, I'm here in Huntsville, Alabama, the Rocket City. So many NASA engineers and companies working with them, and they have infused this technology into their sheets. That's right. The temperature can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality. And if you wake up too hot or too cold, we highly recommend you check out Miracle Brand's bed sheets. Inspired by that silver-infused fabric made by NASA, Miracle Brand makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. And if you know anything about traditional bed sheets, you know they can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat. And
No, wait, stop right there. I didn't know that.
Really?
When I found that out, that your bed sheets are like sleeping on a toilet seat, I could not wait to order more.
Did that change your life?
Yeah, it did. Well, I'm able to sleep better, that's for sure.
Well,
Not only because they're comfortable, but I don't think I'm sleeping in a petri dish.
Well, we've all had those. We've all had the times where you've had a run and you go, hey, we need to wash our sheets. Me and the wife will be like, all right, we need to wash the sheets this weekend. And you wash them and you put them back on the bed and you go, I didn't realize how gross our sheets were until I feel them now clean. They feel different. They smell all different. It's the whole deal. And look, sometimes you're busy and life gets caught up with you and you don't wash them as much as we all need to. That's a fact. You said, Eric, procrastination, one of your weaknesses.
Yep.
That could mean washing the sheets. Well, here's the best part. Miracle Brand offers a whole line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding, sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent 99% of bacteria, and that requires 3 times less laundry. I'm not going to speak for you, but I don't like doing laundry, so I'll take less of it if you want to give me that.
Absolutely. I don't do laundry, but my wife does. I mean, I do my own laundry. Like, I wash my own clothes and stuff. But when it comes to sheets and towels and things like that, I don't normally do that unless my wife's out of town.
Plus, look, we've turned the corner. We're in the holiday season, and Miracle Sheets are the perfect gift for your spouse, friends, or family. Who doesn't want better sleep in luxurious feeling bed sheets? And since these come with 3 free towels, you get 2 gifts in one, just in time for the holidays. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Clean sheets means less bacteria to clog your pores, fewer breakouts, and other skin problems. Go to trymiracle.com/83weeks to try it today or gift it to someone special this holiday season. And we've got a special deal for our 83 Weeks listeners. Save over 40% and be sure to use our promo code 83weeks at checkout to save even more and get 3 free towels. And Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you get a full refund. One more time, upgrade your sleep with Miracle Brand. Go to trymiracle.com/83weeks and use the code 83weeks to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, trymiracle.com/83weeks to treat yourself, a friend, or loved one this holiday season. And thank you, Miracle Brand, for sponsoring this episode. All right, on to War Games. And let's say it's not like the Four Horsemen versus Dusty's Crew War Games of old. From the Observer, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage and Sting and Lex Luger won the War Games over Zodiac and Shark and Kamala and Ming in 18 minutes and 47 seconds. Sting opened with Shark, with the highlights being Sting diving from one ring to the other and doing a body slam. Shark tried to dive from ring to ring, but ended up being caught in the middle like a beached whale. Shark was in need of oxygen before the 5-minute period was up. Zodiac was in next, followed by Savage, Kamala, Luger, Ming, and finally Hogan. When Luger came in, they teased a Savage-Luger split when they bumped into each other and went after each other, but Sting settled them down. Actually, there was more intrigue going into the match on whether or not Savage or Luger would turn on the match itself. When Hogan came in, he threw powder at Kamala, ZODIAC, and Ming, and then beat ZODIAC with the camel clutch for the win. After the match, Kevin Sullivan ran away, but he was brought back in for his 5 minutes after 2:30 of almost no heat because nobody cares about Sullivan. The Giant did the run in and choked Hogan and twisted his neck. Hogan sold it as if he had been maimed, and they went off the air wondering if Hogan would ever wrestle again. 1.25 stars. Eric, this is some good shit for Wrestle Crap right here, isn't it?
It is some good shit for Wrestle Crap. There's no doubt about it. Thank God for the NWO. That's all I got to say, brother. We could have been stuck with this kind of booking for a long time.
Is this like the monster truck deal? Are you hearing feedback later and knowing this isn't working? Are you watching it and going, this shit ain't working?
No, it wasn't working, and
yeah.
I kept my personal taste out of it as much as I could. Obviously, I had a feeling about it, but I kept that to myself. But I just looked at numbers. I'm looking at buy rates. I'm looking at ratings. I'm looking at no growth. It's just, I couldn't wait to get through it. I couldn't wait till it was over with.
Next week, we're setting up Halloween Havoc and the Giants' first in-ring match, which will be challenging Hogan for the WCW World title, plus, of course, the Monster Truck Challenge. And there's all sorts of nonsense on the early Nitros to hype up all this. On paper, this sounds like it's fun, but Hogan appears on 10-2 Nitro wearing a neck brace, and this is where Sullivan comes through the crowd dressed as an old woman. Giant attacks Hogan, and Sullivan shaves Hogan's legendary mustache. That is some heat, brother.
Sullivan dressed up as an old lady. That's worth going to Peacock. If you don't have Peacock, go ahead and subscribe to it. Go to WWE. You got to check this shit out. It's fun listening to Casio and I laugh about it, but you've got to see the stuff for yourself.
Be sure to get some extracurricular.
Yeah, get some extracurricular if it's legal where you live. It is in most places now. Sit back and spend a Saturday night having a good time with this.
Yeah. The next week, Mean Gene interviews Hulk Hogan dressed in all black and with Jimmy Hart, in which Okerlund said the chorus of boos directed at Hogan were due to his uncharacteristic black attire. During the interview, Okerlund said the Giant was barred from the building as a result of a restraining order, and Hogan said the promoter up north was choking on his own ego since Hogan and his pals left. Moments later, footage was shown of the Giant arriving to the parking lot in his monster truck, with Kevin Sullivan and the ZODIAC also appearing in the truck. The truck wasn't allowed inside and was blocked off by police. Hogan then said since the Giant wouldn't be allowed in the arena, he would meet him outside. Eric, you and Conrad have talked about when Hogan moved to the dark side, but the way he would mention Vince randomly while building his feud, why was this a part of that?
I don't know, man. I just think it was personal shit. Vince and Hulk to this day have probably the longest running dysfunctional relationship of anybody I know. They fall in love, they fall out of love, they fall back in love, they fall out of love. It's just the weirdest thing between these two. And I think at that particular time, Hogan had, for whatever reason, he just felt the need to take a shot. I don't know why.
It wasn't something you guys were talking about. Hey, get in a shot. It was just him bringing it up.
That was just Hulk improving.
The Go Home Nitro included a segment in which the lights went out and the Master appeared in his throne on the big screen and discussed his insurance policy for Kevin Sullivan. Moments later, a giant block of ice appeared in the arena as the Master discussed Sullivan's plans for Hogan at Halloween Havoc. Okerlund then conducted an interview with Sullivan and the Giant about the Master's comments, with Sullivan saying the Master obtained the Yeti and the Giant saying he would take Hogan's title. Featured Okerlund conducting an interview in the aisle with Hogan, dressed in all black with Jimmy Hart, in which Hogan discussed Sullivan, the Giant, and the Yeti. before calling WCW US champion Sting, Randy Savage, and Lex Luger dogs after his carcass, and he would beat all of them. The show ended with the Yeti breaking free from a giant block of ice. Episodic TV is fun, isn't it, Eric?
When it's done well, it is. When it was like this, it was just a weekly dose of insanity. Pain.
We should point out at this point, Kamala disappears from WCW, so the dungeon is down a member. Do you remember why Kamala left?
I don't think there was a specific reason. I just, we didn't bring him in on a long-term deal. It's kind of like a hot shot type of thing.
So would that be a thing that you saw it wasn't working mid-course and said, hey, he's out?
No, because then I would have had to fire half the roster. The entire Dungeon of Doom would have been gone.
It was perfect timing. Half the roster. Okay. Here we go. Just wait, because you're going to love this. The very last line, Eric. From the Observer, next came the Sumo Monster Truck match. This match was actually a compilation of about a 5-minute live match and several hours worth of taping the previous night. They actually had 2 monster truck drivers doing the driving and had Hogan and the Giant inside the truck faking like they were driving. If you noticed, all the in the truck shots were identical and spliced in badly, which gave it the Planet 9 look. The Dungeon of Doom truck looked cool. Even Hogan's truck looked like it was on steroids. After the match, Hogan and the Giant argued and shoved and punched, and eventually the Giant lost his balance on a ledge that was supposed to be overhanging Lake Michigan, although there is actually no part of the roof of Cobo Arena that overhangs the lake, as there is a parking lot totally surrounding the building, and he plunged to his death, or so we are led to believe. Quote, angles like this are the reason pro wrestling in this country is in the condition it is in. Thoughts, Eric?
I agree. I agree. It was, and Giant. Now, first of all, I think Cobo Arena, isn't it on the river? Or it's, at least it's close to the river.
It's close, yeah.
Yeah, it's close. You could hit the river with a Frisbee or with a Giant if you throw them off. But as absurd as this entire idea was, the most absurd part of it is when Giant came back into the building. He wasn't dead. He didn't drown. He just took a dive off the roof. He'll be fine. He's a giant. Come on. He's a giant.
He just rinsed off. He's back.
No big deal. When you're omnipotent.
When you're omnipotent. The Giant beat Hulk Hogan via DQ, 16 minutes and 57 seconds, so Hogan kept the WCW title. Hogan came out first in street clothes, explaining that because of what happened to the Giant, there would be no match. And then the Giant came out, proving to be immortal to falling off buildings, but not to leg drops and poorly timed foot to the faces. This was basically the Hogan-Andre match from Pontiac redone with a different finish, except that this Giant is a lot more mobile than Andre was, and this Hogan has a lot less charisma than that Hogan did. For a guy in his second pro match, by the way, White had worked one show more than 1 year ago for Larry Sharp in New Jersey. White looked real good as far as poise. He didn't do anything impressive athletically. There were only 2 spots where you could see he was looking lost, which is kind of amazing for a guy under this kind of pressure in such a long match. After the Superman comeback, Hogan hit the leg drop, but Jimmy Hart then knocked out ref Randy Anderson with the title belt. Hogan, not seeing it, told Hart to revive the ref, and the moment Hogan turned around, he threw the ref down again. As Hogan was pounding on Giant, Hart hit Hogan with the belt as well, but he didn't sell it. But then he went after Hart. He was caught from behind by a deadly bear hug Luger and Savage then did a run-in, but Hart hit Savage with the belt, and Luger began attacking Savage and Hogan. Here we go. The Yeti, who turned out to be Ron Reis, wrapped up like SMW's Prince Charmin, since Giant Gonzalez went AWOL after being hospitalized in midweek after actually getting into the country to do the angle, who was good 3 or 4 inches taller than our original Giant, combined for a double bear hug on Hogan. At least I hope that's what it was, because it looked more like a kinky sandwich. Yeti isn't supposed to be a mummy, but it's supposed to be an abominable snowman from the Himalayas. They got it half right. Luger then put Hogan in the torture rack. Hogan and Savage were left laying as the Dungeon of Doom left the ring. It started as a great angle, but turned into something campy in the worst way when the guy wrapped up in the toilet paper showed up and tried to have sex with Hogan. Giant left with the title belt. It's one of the best breakdowns ever by Meltzer.
Oh, God. Oh, my. You know what's fun is Conrad makes me laugh, but listening to you read this stuff, and it helps that it's as ridiculous as it is. You've got some good material here.
It's incredible.
It is so bizarre that I can do nothing but laugh. There is no defense. I can't take people back and try to explain what I was thinking and why I was making some of these decisions, because sometimes I can. But in this particular case, other than trying to explain why I was kind of excited about the monster truck element, this is just bizarre. There's just no other way to frame it. It was just bizarre.
A lot to unpack. Like you said.
No, you don't even need to unpack it. Just throw the shit in the garbage. There's no reason. You only unpack things that's necessary to unpack. You don't unpack garbage. This was garbage. Let's just have fun with it.
This is the only time we see Reis as the Yeti. He is repackaged as the Super Giant Ninja immediately afterwards. And, you know, I guess that's what you get if you try to have sex with Hogan in the middle of the ring. But also we've got Lex Luger, now technically part of the Dungeon and longtime manager of Hogan, Jimmy Hart, is now going to be the manager of Dungeon of Doom. Jimmy Hart announced a week later he had to put a secret clause in the contract that Hogan could lose the WCW title in the Halloween Havoc match via DQ. So in his first match, the Giant is the WCW champion. You guys have talked about it a little bit before, but talk about this. He's now the title holder in his first match here. Do you agree with what Meltzer said? Hey, pretty impressive, the spot he was put in to, I mean, he did his job of trying to make that the best he could do.
Absolutely agree. I mean, Paul White, what people, and we saw glimpses of it later on, you know, there was a lot of, not concern, but awareness, because Paul White was, I mean, he's a freak. He's a giant, right? And Hulk especially took Paul under his wing and really wanted to try to make Paul the next version of Andre the Giant. And Hulk was really careful about Paul not doing too much and just doing giant things. Didn't want to see Paul bump. Didn't want to see Paul do anything too athletic, because giants aren't athletic. Giants are giants. They're powerful, right? But Paul could do a kip up.
Wow.
I mean, that's something that most 160-pound gymnasts can't do. But Paul could, at 300 some odd pounds or whatever he weighed at the time, he could literally lay on a mat and kip up without using his hands. That's really, really difficult to do. Paul could just do it naturally. He was a super gifted athlete. And Paul wanted to do more. Paul was really gifted, really, really gifted. And it was hard, I think, a little bit on Paul, a little difficult on Paul to not do more, because people were trying to, you know, hold him back and keep him from doing things that would, in their minds at least, make him less of a giant and more of like everybody else.
And also, by the way, just as a fan, even though for years I've seen him on television, he's the Giant, he's the Big Show. still the first time you see that man in person, you're like, holy shit. I mean, he's just a giant human. I mean, the giant is the perfect name for him.
I'm 5'11". Right now I'm about 200 pounds, 210. I'm an average size person, right? Whenever last time I saw Paul a year ago, whenever it was, I walked up to say hi. And first of all, you shake hands with him and it's like sticking your hand. It's like slamming your hand in a 63 Chrysler Imperial car door. You know, like in 63, in the 60s, they'd make a big Chrysler Imperial. You could make 7 cars out of the amount of metal that was in one car back in the 60s. Paul's hand is like sticking your hand in the car door and getting it slammed in a 63 Chrysler Imperial. And then you look up at him and you're really looking up at him.
Incredible.
He's so big. You know, I feel like, and again, he's not that much taller than me, but I almost feel like I'm looking into his, I'm looking into his midsection standing next to him. And you don't realize that on television. I mean, you know he's big because you can see him relative to everybody else that you know is big. So you know he's a big dude. But you're right, Casio. When you meet him for the first time, it's like, holy shit.
I mean,
I didn't know it was this big.
Yeah, you should. Like I said, he's been billed as this giant man. He's never not been billed as a giant man. And yet still, I was shocked at how big the guy was. That speaks to how large he really is. We should know he's large. He still surprises you when you see him. And I'll be objective as I can. I think Hulk and not, it wasn't just Hulk. It was everybody around. Kevin Sullivan, everybody really trying to protect Paul from himself and protect him from doing too much, because Paul was like a racehorse. He wanted to go. He was capable. I mean, Paul could do a standing drop kick like nothing while he had a beer in his hand. I mean, he's just a freak that way. But if Paul White or someone like Paul White showed up today, he'd be doing hurricane ranas off the top rope. You know, incredible.
It'd be stupid. It would be the other extreme. Like, you know, we went to one extreme with Paul White trying to make him the next Andre. And I think if you would introduce him today, you'd be seeing him doing all kinds, because he was capable of it.
Yeah.
It's freaky.
Eric, lots of adults choose to use nicotine, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Get ready for this. Lucy breakers. If you're one of the millions of adults who use nicotine, you know that not all products are the same, and there's one new product that stands above the rest. Lucy breakers are the only nicotine pouch that gives you a blast of flavor from the first moment to the last, and each pouch contains a capsule that you break open to release a rush of flavor that doesn't fade away like those other pouches. You know, the ones that rhyme with thin. They come in so many flavors: mint, berry, citrus, mango, and even espresso. And you don't have to go to the gas station or corner store to get them. Just order online and they'll be shipped straight to your door. Every order gets free shipping. Plus, if you subscribe, you're going to save 15% and never run out. That's right. You're never run out if you subscribe. To do this, whether you're using nicotine while working, creating, or playing, Lucy breakers are the intelligent choice. And we've got a special deal for our listeners, Eric. You get $10 off your first order when you use our promo code
83 weeks.
That's right, 83 weeks at checkout, and shipping is always free. That's Lucy, LUCY.CO. Use the promo code
83 weeks
to receive $10 off and free shipping. So visit lucy.co for more details. And we thank Lucy for sponsoring the podcast. The best part, the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. We thank Lucy Breakers for sponsoring this episode. All right, Eric, let's get back into this. Just to set up the timeline and to get your feedback, it's crazy to think at this moment in time, we are exactly 8 months away from the NWO coming through all this as the top heel stable. And right now, we've got Yetis and Giants facing each other. 8 months, like you said, thank God for the NWO. We're 8 months out. Is there any peeps of this? Is this laying the groundwork for, hey, we need to try something else and maybe reach out to somebody? What's the timeline going on with NWO 8 months out? Is it nothing?
No. I mean, and according to the research that you got from Sabato, Derek Sabato, Dave made reference to, it's matches like this or whatever, creative like this, that is the reason why wrestling is in the condition that wrestling is in today in the United States, or something to that effect. And that was true at this time. While this is going on, I'm going back and forth to Japan. I probably had only been to Japan twice at this point, but New Japan business they were printing money. They were putting 60, 80,000 people in the Tokyo Dome for their big New Year's Eve show, selling it out with an average ticket price back then in the mid 90s of about $80 or $90 from what I remember being told. So the business in Japan was booming, whereas business in the United States wasn't. Not for WWE, certainly not for WCW. We were the number 2 wrestling company in the United States, but the difference between number 1 and number 2, we might as well have been number 222 in terms of things that mattered: ratings, revenue, pay-per-view, success, licensing, merchandising. We didn't have any of that.
Were they a double, a triple, a quad? Well, I mean, how far are we talking?
When I took over WCW, their gross revenues, that's like every nickel that comes to the door before you account for expenses or anything like that, was about $25 million a year. Our talent budget was about half that.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that. It's somewhere in there. We were losing $10 million a year. We couldn't draw flies if we rolled the roster in cow shit and put the event on in a pasture. Flies would not have come. And WWE was doing better than us, but not much. Keep in mind, they were coming off of the steroid scandal. Hogan left. There probably was 6 or 8 months or a year or two even where Vince was a little distracted with the possibility of doing 20 years in a federal prison and fighting off the federal government. So business had suffered as a result. And like I said, our business was even worse. So I'm looking at Japan going, what the fuck? What do they do differently than we do? And that's when I started not studying, that's saying too much. When I started going over there and asking a lot of questions, but really observing and just seeing the fundamental differences between the way the Japanese product was presented and treated by the media. Like the media in Japan, Tokyo in particular, after the big shows, front page of the sports section was headlines of what happened last night at the Tokyo Dome. The media really treated professional wrestling in Japan with a lot of respect. Obviously more so than they did here in the United States at that time. It was, again, coming off the steroid scandal, and it's fake, and Vince McMahon came out and told everybody it wasn't, all that, right? So the business was nosediving for everybody here. And I was spending as much time as I could in Japan asking as many questions. And my takeaway was, we need something that's more real. The Japanese product, in the ring, the action in the ring is more believable, stiffer. It is strong style. Shit hurts over there. They lay stuff in over there. Whereas here, it was more of a aggressive waltz at that time. It's since evolved and changed a lot. But at that time, everything was so animated and cartoonish, and nobody could take it seriously. So it was about this time, after being exposed to what we just had to sit through and talk about, and me going over to Japan and going, holy shit, they're selling this shit out. And people are treating it with respect.
Yeah.
Why? And it was just, and I know, the narrative, because of guys like Dave Meltzer and others, he stole that idea from Japan. He didn't steal shit from Japan, other than the idea that they're treating it more seriously. It's more, therefore it's more believable. How do I make my product more believable? That's what I took from Japan. That's what I stole from Japan. Not an angle. I didn't see an invasion angle while I was over there. Nobody told me about an invasion angle while I was over there. But I saw, what I watched in the ring made me believe that they were really beating the shit out of each other. Well, because they were. But it just was so much more credible and believable that I came back around this time going, I don't know how we're going to do this. Someday I'd love to be able to figure that out. Yeah. This was the beginning, in my mind, really just recognizing. I wasn't formulating any idea or any plan for the NWO or an invasion at this point, but I was profoundly aware that we had to come up with something, because what we were doing, now for WWE and now for WCW, nothing was working.
So maybe not at this point, like you said, we don't have the plan on how we're going to do it right, but we know that we're doing it wrong at this point now.
We know that we're doing it wrong, and I got a glimpse of how to do it right. I just wasn't sure how to connect the dots, because it's easy to say, oh, just bring Japanese wrestling over to the United States. That's not it either. A Japanese product would never, on a consistent basis, draw here in the United States. Culture, we're two different cultures. Just because something works in one culture doesn't mean it's going to work in another culture. Comedy is a perfect example. American humor is different than French humor.
Way different.
French humor is different than even British humor, which, we can kind of get with sometimes because there's a little bit more crossover just because of the lack of a language barrier. But even British humor, I have a hard time with sometimes. It's just, to me, enough, it just doesn't make me laugh, right? And just saying, oh, let's just bring New Japan Wrestling to the United States. You can't do that either. There's a sweet spot in between somewhere, and it's taking the best of one thing and combining it with what works over here and making something new out of it. That I knew we had to do. I just didn't know how to do it.
Let's speed up the timeline just a little bit. There's a lot of guys going to be coming and going, so I want to get your feedback on those guys. On the next November 13th Nitro, we see Hogan entering even more into his dark side, appearing in his own type of cave, wearing some kind of Lone Ranger costume. He's waving a sword around. This is a good look right there. He says the Macho Man is going to bring Ming's head on a silver platter to them as the first man on the Dungeon of Doom destruction list. Hogan also questions whose side Sting is on, as he is still associating with Dungeon member Lex Luger. Then on November 18th, Kevin Sullivan says he is bringing the Master something he has never had before, some laughter. Sullivan brings into the cave the man from the Isle of Nowhere. Hugh Morris is now in the mix. Is this Sullivan's idea to bring in Bill DeMott? He had the perfect look for the Dungeon, at least, right?
Yeah, and Bill DeMott was a talented guy.
Super talented.
Bill DeMott was huge, by the way. He didn't impress you that as much. I mean, he's impressive. Don't get me wrong. But he wasn't as impressive as he should have been. He was like 6 foot, whatever. Let's call it 6'3", 6'4" to be kind. Okay, let's call it about 6'2", because that's probably more accurate. But he was about 5'8" thick. He was almost as thick as he was tall. He's big, powerful, but agile like a cat. For a guy that big, he moved like 160-pound high school running back. It was crazy watching him work. But yeah, that would have been Kevin's idea.
And of course, he coached and helped a lot of people. So he had a long time in the business.
Hey, real quick, want to give a shout out to James up in Stoneville, North Carolina. He's a friend of the show. Hell, he's a friend of the family now. We were able to go ahead and help his family recently save more than $1,200 a month. Really think about this. My man Robbie didn't save $1,200 one time. He's going to save it each and every month, all because he went to savewithconrad.com. He left us a 5-star review earlier this week, and he said this: from the first phone call with Christian, all the hard work Diane put in, Jennifer taking time to explain things and help me understand where we were at with the deal, right up to Steve helping me get this survey through. Nothing but professionalism all around. Dealing with First Family has helped us to the point we've cut $1,200 a month off our bills. I can't say enough about the team Conrad has assembled. I highly recommend First Family to anyone looking to purchase or refinance their home. Thanks to Conrad and the entire First Family team. No, thank you, James, for the great review, and congratulations on saving $1,200 a month. And oh, by the way, you can skip your next 2 house payments. It's real, folks. SaveWithConrad.com can help you. We're licensed in more than 40 states, but if you've got credit card debt, if you're looking to save money on your monthly payments, if you're looking to pay your house off faster, or even buy a house with no money down, SaveWithConrad.com is your hookup. Holler if you hear me. That's SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. And oh, by the way, you don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. What are you waiting for? Find out how much money you can save for free at SaveWithConrad.com.
Day before the World War III pay-per-view, it's time to add another new member as we see the one-man gang return to WCW and enter the Dungeon of Doom. Do you remember him coming into the mix at all?
Yeah. Yeah, and by this time, look, there was
that kind of everybody's response? Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, it probably was. You know, it wasn't One Man Gang's fault. I don't want to put this on here.
Right.
But that Dungeon of Doom thing, if there was ever a chance it was going to work, it was going to work in the first 2 or 3 weeks when everybody went, oh, wow, what's that? Instead, they went, oh, my God, what is that? Once the audience gets to the, oh, my God, what is that phase, you can't get them to the, oh, my God, what is that? They're not coming back.
Right.
They made up
no
their
matter
mind.
who you bring in or kick
Doesn't
out.
matter.
Or what they do.
You could have had them all, you know, walk puppies to the ring, set them on fire, and stomp them out live on television, and they're still not going to get heat. It's just that what an awful picture I just painted. But my point is, they couldn't have brought in anybody to make that Dungeon of Doom thing work. It was dead. It should have been pronounced dead weeks before, months before. But everybody just kept walking by the room and didn't want to look at the cadaver on the table. It was just horrible.
This would also be the final time we see King Curtis as the master and also the Dungeon of Doom cave. Was this just time to move on? Was there an issue with King Curtis? What do you remember?
I mean, there was no, you know, adversarial kind of issues with King Curtis. He was easy to do business with, but you know, I think he lived in Hawaii, or I'm not sure where he lived at the time, but his health wasn't good. He had, his legs were swelling up really bad. It was difficult for him to travel. It just wasn't working for him, and it clearly wasn't working for us. So it just kind of happened naturally, I think. Really,
no controversy to speak.
No controversy.
Into 1996 now, and the Barbarian was added to the mix, and he and Ming become the faces of fear. We've kind of lost track at this point for the amount of people in the Dungeon of Doom. Could this have been a warning on how to expand the NWO, Eric?
Yeah, you know, it should have been. I guess I could have said, hey, remember when we did that Dungeon of Doom and we kept adding all these motherfuckers and it actually didn't work?
You just said once it's over, and doesn't matter who you bring in or send out.
Well, I think the difference is, though, you know, Dungeon of Doom never got over.
Right, NWO got over.
Was a disaster from the minute it saw a red camera light. So there was nothing you could do to change that impression. The NWO, on the other hand, you know, took off like a rocket ship for a good 1.5 or 2 years. And it wasn't until I started adding people and diluting the essence of the character of the NWO that it started to falter. You know, and that was on me. I've admitted that before. I had my reasons for doing it, but it doesn't matter. The end result was the same.
We need I was in the Dungeon of Doom and all I got was a lousy t-shirt. Anybody can claim they were in the Dungeons of Doom.
Nobody's wearing that shirt.
We also see a new planned foil for Hogan in the form of the Loch Ness Monster.
Oh, God.
Better known as Giant Haystacks. As a big star in British wrestling in the 70s and 80s, He hasn't wrestled for years at this point. He was 49 years old here in 1996, but his run was short-lived, as unfortunately he was diagnosed with lymphoma and had to go back home to the UK. Eric, are you signing off on these guys? Seriously, are you signing off on him?
I had to have, right?
Incredible. Are they just pitching them and you going, we're trying to find a Hail Mary here? Well, I mean, do you remember what you're thinking?
Honest to God, with guys like that, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the Loch Ness Monster, but at this point, it wasn't that expensive. It wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I was more trying to placate some people if there wasn't too much damage involved than I was thinking clearly, creatively. It was, God, this is painful. I don't even know what the fuck I would have been thinking at this point. Let's be real. I don't know what was going through my freaking mind.
This is 96. Is this where you're traveling to Japan more and more? I mean, what?
Going more and more. And this is, I don't know what period. I'm thinking this is like April of 96, probably somewhere in there.
Yeah, trying to see. Yeah, early 96-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, I was spending more time in Japan. I was also getting more involved in creative by this time because I used to I would if I knew there was a creative. Now, this is when I was executive vice president of the company. If I knew there was a booking meeting going on in a big conference room, I would avoid that conference room because I didn't want to get called in there.
Oh, okay.
That's how much an aversion I had to that process and how insecure I was in myself to be a part of that process. I'll go over here and focus on the business of the wrestling business. I'll get involved in the things I know something about. I'm not going to get involved in something I don't know about. I didn't want to feel stupid, honestly. You know, I avoided it. But by this point, I kind of had to learn. I was now sitting in those meetings, trying to understand the process. Actually, that would have started before early 96. That would have started in 95 because Nitro was a gun to the back of my head. I either made Nitro work or I died trying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I started in probably late 95, just getting a feel. By 96, I was probably gone from having a feel to having an opinion.
No.
And by the middle of 96, I went from having an opinion to having the only opinion that mattered at the end of the day. At that point, I started to feel comfortable approving or not approving, or at least articulating a strong opinion about creative ideas. But that didn't really start until 96.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that happened as you're starting to form an opinion. The Dungeon of Doom in the early part of 96 joined forces with the Horsemen to form an alliance to end Hulkamania. They also enlisted the services of Z Gangsta, the former Zeus, and Ultimate Solution. This led to the horrid Doomsday cage match at Uncensored 96, where Hogan and Savage defeated 8 men thanks to help from the former Zodiac. He's now the Booty Man, Eric, who it was now revealed had been basically...
He's like a fucking cockroach in professional wrestling. You kill one character and he comes back to life as another. He'll never die. He'll never die. Here's what's going to happen. A fucking meteor is going to hit the United States, the world. It's going to fucking implode. Nothing's going to live except for cockroaches, Ric Flair, and Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake. Because you can't kill him.
Put some respect on his name. He's the Booty Man at this point.
Fuck.
He's a spy. He's been a spy in the dungeon all along for Hogan, Eric. You didn't see that coming. Nobody did. With Hogan disappearing and then returning to being the NWO, the dungeon's main focus has now turned to feuding with the Horsemen. The Shark is also kicked out of the dungeon and has half of his head shaved. The next week he does a promo about he's not a fish. He's not an avalanche. He's a man, damn it.
Now, here's what's funny. Not that this entire fucking show hasn't been hilarious, but Hogan's off doing a movie at this point, right? Because we only had him for 4 pay-per-views a year. So if he had time in between, he could, get a gig doing a movie. He'd go do a movie. And I think it was at this point or somewhere close to it. He's off doing a movie. Now, the last thing that Hogan did before the NWO happened was this fucking Dungeon of Doom bullshit, right? That's how Conrad's dad says bullshit. That's bullshit. Sometime I'll tell you about the first
best part is when you said that, I thought Larry Thompson. That was the best. Before you even said it, you went bullshit. I went money. That sounds like a Larry Thompson deal.
Bullshit. So the first time Lori and I together, I've been to Conrad's a couple of times before this, but Lori and I go down there together last year, and we're sitting down there on a Saturday and we're watching football, right? Larry's there. Deborah's there. Conrad's mom and dad are there. A couple of friends are there. You're there. We got a full house down in the TV room. And Lori and I are sitting behind Larry. He's down in front. And, of course, he'd see something happening on the field he didn't like. That's bullshit. And then Lori would go, that's bullshit. And my wife has a voice like, a cartoon character. She's a little thing. She doesn't have a deep voice. So when she goes, that's bullshit. It was fucking hilarious. And then every time Larry would get excited about something or make some comment, she would imitate him. And Lori had a blast watching football.
She popped all of us all night. She kept chiming in perfectly.
Never stopped.
No, it was so good when she would chime in.
But going back to so Hulk's off doing a movie. The last thing he did was this silly ass Dungeon of Doom shit. Now that he's gone, it's getting even weirder, if that's possible. And then he sees Scott Hall come down through the crowd, cut that promo, talk about his big guy, his big buddy coming back. And then Kevin Nash shows up, and Hulk's sitting in a trailer in the middle of fucking nowhere, California, on top of a mountain, freezing his ass off, doing a Santa with Muscles movie. And he's seeing all this good shit happening on tape. And he's thinking, man, I'm going to go back to WCW. These guys are going to be doing this fun shit. And I'm going to be back in the fucking Dungeon of Doom chasing a shark around a cage. I'm calling Bischoff right away. I'm getting that skinny little fucker's ass up here in this mountaintop. We're going to talk about what's going on because I don't want to be in a Dungeon of Doom no more. I want to be with the cool guys. Oh, I just lost your audio.
Time for you to be having an opinion with him.
Yeah.
It's time for you to insert your opinion, my friend.
There we go.
I guess he got that Henson shaving deal. He got that shaving half of his head deal. He's ready to go. You can stop me anytime you want, but I'll run through a list of more members are now being added.
No. I've had enough pain.
Conan, Max Muscle, Big Bubba, and BRAUN the Leprechaun, baby. Yeah.
Is that Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker?
It is. Yeah. It is. The State Patrol, baby.
Jimmy Hart loved that character. Jimmy loved the Leprechaun because Jimmy loved those cartoony characters. Still does to this day. Jimmy Hart. I mean, look at Jimmy Hart. I mean, he's about as cartoony as everybody else in the Dungeon of Doom. But that's the way he is when he he lives that character, and he has for the last 60 or 70 years.
Incredible. Well, look, Jimmy Hart's been printing money with the cartoon characters for a long time, my friends. But let's tell you about our friends with Rocket Money. Yeah, if you are wasting money on subscriptions, 80% of people have subscriptions that they forgot about. Maybe it's for you. It might be your unused Amazon Prime account or a Hulu account that never gets streamed. There's this great app that people use that helps us track all of our expenses. And because of it, I no longer waste money on subscriptions that you don't even use. You might have heard of it. It's called Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. Yeah. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, when the actual total is closer to $200 or more. That's right. You could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions you don't even know about. There's this app we love called Rocket Money, like we said, formerly known as Truebill. Eric, I just did this with my wife. You know, like we said earlier, inflation's a big thing. Interest rates are up. People's watching their money. I said, hey, we need to just make sure we've got our budget in check. And we pulled the cord a long time ago. We pulled the plug on cable and started just doing subscription, which a lot of people, of course, have. And, of course, at first it was to save money. And now when we actually put it on paper a couple weeks ago, we realized we're spending more than we ever did on television.
I actually subscribed to Rocket Money.
Oh, nice.
4 or 5 months ago, before they became a sponsor, because I had heard about them, and I'm one of those people that, oh yeah, I'll just subscribe to that, you know. And a lot of times, and it's not just being frivolous, but a lot of those times is, oh, it's free.
Yep.
But it's not really free. It's free for the first 45 minutes, and then they're gonna hit your credit card, right?
Yep.
But like a dummy, it's something I wanted, a spontaneous moment. Oh, okay, I'll give the information. I'll just cancel it, you know, after. I'll decide if I like it or not. If I don't like it, I'll just cancel it. Well, guess what? The procrastinator here never gets around to canceling shit until it gets to the point where I could be driving a nice new Maybach like Conrad with the amount of money I'm wasting on stupid subscriptions that I didn't even realize I had. I'm that guy. Rocket Money exists for people just like me, because I'm probably like a lot of the people listening to this. You subscribe, your intentions are good, you forget, you move on. Oh, it's only a couple bucks. I'm not going to take 20 minutes out of my day trying to figure out how to cancel something, right? That was my excuse. I got Rocket. They show me everything I'm subscribing to. I go, no, I didn't. I don't remember that. Boom, press a button, gone. Done. Over. So not only can you see how much money you're wasting, it makes it easy to make it all go away. And there's a whole lot of other benefits. Like, you know, if once it was about 2 weeks ago or so, my wife, Mrs. B, wrote a check for something. I don't remember what it was, and I wasn't around for it. And it was a big check. You know, it was $3, $4, $5 grand, whatever it was. It was normally our checks aren't that big unless they're like,
right,
you know, house payments or something. But I get a notice directly to my email saying, hey, larger than usual check is hit. Oh. So I have a chance to see, well, what is that? Somebody hacking into my account, somebody doing something they shouldn't do. They give you a heads up. If something seems a little unusual, they give you a heads up. I called my wife. I said, what are you dropping money on, honey? And she told me, and I said, okay, well, you have a wonderful day. I'll see you at home. Grab the Blue Chew. I'll meet you around 8.
Look, the beauty is, like you said, it's convenient. We are living in a time where everybody wants everything instantly. You said it yourself, Eric. You want to cancel something? You press cancel and it's done. Rocket Money takes care of the rest for you. It's all in one app, shows you all your subscriptions in one place, and then cancels you for whatever you don't want any.
And here's one more thing, because there's a lot of good things about this app. I'm a firm believer in it. Like I said, I subscribed months before they became a sponsor. I was really excited that they are. But you know, I've never been good at budgeting. You know, I'm a spontaneous kind of guy, and my wife is the opposite. She's good at it. I'm not. But with the app, I get a notification. This week you spent this much money on entertainment. This week you spent this much money on groceries. This week. Ooh. So once you establish the budget, Rocket helps you stay on it. I can't say enough good things about it.
Well, if you want to get on this action and get rid of the useless subscriptions with Rocket Money now, just like Eric did, go to rocketmoney.com/83 weeks. Seriously, it can save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/83 weeks. Cancel your unnecessary subscriptions right now at rocketmoney.com/83 weeks. And we thank Rocket Money for sponsoring this episode of 83 Weeks. We've got just enough. We're gonna talk about how this all wraps up, Eric. Then we've got some fan questions, and we'll be out of here. All right? Here we go. We ended with the Leprechaun, is BRAUN the Leprechaun. But here we go. There's a skit, pretty ridiculous. We could have put that in any of these descriptions.
Yeah, really, which says a lot.
It's in Gotham City, and it aired in August 1996 with Sullivan saying they are being attacked from within by the Horsemen and from outside by the NWO. And if people had listened to him about Hogan earlier, then we wouldn't have this NWO problem. He does have a point there. That did help tie the tie line in. But he opens the 3 doors to bring out Bubba, Braun, and the WCW champion, the Giant, who says they'll take out anyone who gets in their way, whether it be the Horsemen or the NWO. Of course, Giant lost the title to Hogan and would join the NWO shortly thereafter, and Bubba would join the NWO too. BRAUN the Leprechaun, by the way, was only there in a blink, and you'll miss it moment. The dungeon had started to crumble. I guess by this point, we could have said at earlier points, but members still aligned, such as the Faces of Fear seem to focus more on their own as a tag team. And then Sullivan is in the feud with Benoit for a lot of 96 and 97, including bringing Jacqueline in to be his valet. But after losing the retirement match to Benoit at Bash of the Beach 96, we can officially say the Dungeon of Doom is no more, and not a moment too soon, right?
Thank God! Father! Thank you, Father!
Thank God. Did the Dungeon of Doom help anyone but Kevin Sullivan's career?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. And you know, maybe it was so bad that it forced me to try to figure out how to create something that was more believable. Maybe it was so painful that I couldn't just look the other way until something better came along. Maybe it was so painful that deep down inside I knew that unless I could find something and hit at least a double, if not a triple, that my days in that role were over. Maybe that's what I was thinking.
But you don't think Kevin wasn't doing it as I'll just do this to further my career. He was legitimately trying to make something happen, right?
No, Kevin didn't.
Yeah, it's not a knock on Kevin Sullivan.
Kevin was a booker performer, and I would have preferred he would have been a booker. He was a performer because he wanted to be a performer. And that's something that's hard to take away from people, really. And it's not like I paid Kevin a lot more money to be a booker either. So Kevin didn't want to give up performing. He enjoyed it, you know, and I get that. It's just something that I think people forget. And when they start being critical of guys who've been in the business a long time, not so much anymore, because I think the audience's perception has changed a little bit, and they respect people that have been in the business a long time. But back in the 80s and 90s, it was like, oh, no, he's 40 years old. He's too old. Are you fucking kidding me? You know, Chris Jericho's 52 yesterday. And it's still, I think, at the top of his game, by the way. I'm not being critical. But back then, when a performer reached his 40s, they were considered to be, you know, out to pasture. But if you're in your 40s and you've made your living in the ring and you've been getting that rush of performing in front of a live audience, whether it's 300 people or 30,000 people, sometimes it doesn't matter. You're still getting the rush. If you're 40 years old, you don't want to quit. You don't want anybody taking that shit away from you because you still love it. You still want to do it. So that was part of it with me and with Kevin. Kevin wanted to be out there performing. He wasn't doing it to extend his career. He wasn't doing it because he made a lot more money doing it. He was doing it because he loved it. And I let him do it because I knew he loved it.
It is funny to think earlier that we mentioned Haystacks being 49 as a knock on him at the time. And you look now at so many guys, like you mentioned, not only early 50s, late 40s, mid 40s that are not only still
Sting is 63,
still participating, but at a high level. That's pretty incredible to think about. How the business has changed that much. That's pretty incredible. All right. As you can imagine, before we get out of here, Eric, we've got a ton of questions. about this. We've hit a lot of it, but just to wrap it up, make sure everyone gets involved. We encourage you to get involved with our podcast. Follow us on all the social media. This one comes from our Twitter at 83 Weeks, at E Bischoff. Comes from the Francis Reis. It's kind of hard to sum it up, Eric, and we kind of hit on it. I mean, we've chopped up every angle of this, but Francis Reis wants to know, first thing to come into your mind about Dungeon of Doom when somebody brings it up.
I'm looking for a way out of the room. Where's the door? How the fuck do I get out of here?
This has now become the Dungeon of Doom. If you bring it up for all of us, okay. Wrestling Study Podcast at WWE Master 2018 says, ask Eric, any original members that were discussed or pitched for the Dungeon of Doom that we did not see?
Did you just listen to this show, bro?
Well,
anybody that had ever put on a pair of wrestling boots at one point in time was a member of the Dungeon of Doom. The fuck?
so you don't remember anybody where you're like, yeah, let's not make that happen. If they wanted in, they were in, right?
Incredible.
Adam Leeson, he tweets us at 83 Weeks. Hogan loved a heel faction to run through. If he hadn't been a member of the NWO, would he have been able to play his creative card and run through them also? Could any of this work in today's wrestling?
Could any of this, by this, I mean, I'm assuming that he meant Dungeon of Doom. The answer to that would be an unequivocal no. No,
it didn't work then.
It didn't work then. It sure as fuck would work now.
Yeah.
God. And again, to the second part of that question, it's a fair question, but it's such a hypothetical that there's no way that I can honestly answer that. I would, as I sit here now, knowing what I know, having gone through what I've gone through, there's no fucking way Hogan would have used the NWO just to go through as another heel faction. That's easy for me to say sitting here right now. If Hogan wouldn't have volunteered to be the third man, if it would have ended up being Sting, would there have been a storyline with the NWO as the heels and Hogan trying to come to WCW's rescue? I absolutely believe that probably would have happened, but it would have been different. It would not have been presented in the same way. It would have had more of a reality tone to it, because while I was wondering how I was going to bring that Japanese influence, the reality influence, to the American product that I produced, right about then, Scott Hall is available. Kevin Nash is available. Ooh, there's my storyline. These guys used to work here. They didn't get the respect they wanted. They went somewhere else. They became huge stars. Now they're coming back to make everybody pay. That was the premise. That was the elevator pitch of the NWO in my mind. Not that I pitched it to anybody, but that was it. There's no way that Hogan would have, with the same cartoonish approach, gone through the NWO. It would have been different. And who knows? It might have been great. I don't know. But it wouldn't have been in the vein of what we just talked about.
He's not coming out in a black mask with a sword. And
no, he wouldn't call Curtis, say, Curtis, I know we had some shit between us before. I'd like to put that shit aside because I need a big fucking scary cocksucker like you to come in and scare everybody to death. No.
Big scary. Okay. Matt Guerra says, did it ever occur to you that after the Giant fell off the top of Kobo and reemerged for the main event, that he should appear injured or maybe dirty or maybe even from out of an ambulance? Instead, he went out like he came from the dressing room ready for a match.
It certainly occurred to me about 48 hours later when I started getting phone calls from everybody that knew me. I said, dude, the fuck?
What the fuck?
How'd that happen? And it's wrestling. Quit picking on me.
Jason Bayless, he says at 83 Weeks on Twitter, one of the guys who Hulk wanted to bring in for the Dungeon, and I think we saw him back one time, the Nitro before Halloween Havoc 1995, was El Gigante, Jorge Gonzalez, because they were friends from the Thunder in Paradise days. I was always curious what happened there, asked Jason.
Trying to remember. Giant Gonzalez. Oh, yeah. Giant. He was leaving WCW about the time that I first arrived. I think Giant Gonzalez had been in WCW, but was there for maybe 6 or 8 weeks right after I first started. And then he left, and it was a big deal that he left because I think Jim Herd was really big on him. No pun intended. What I heard is that Giant he didn't like wrestling. He didn't like the business, and he was really homesick. He didn't want to be on the road. He didn't want to have to live in the United States. So I think the real answer is Giant Gonzalez had no interest in maybe making an appearance as long as he was in town doing a movie or TV series, but he had no interest in being a part of WCW.
Eric, as people are watching this, if they're watching this on our YouTube, and even if not, they've seen pictures of probably both of us, at least you. They know we have a lot in common. We're both ruggedly handsome. We're both men's men. We like to drink beer. But where we're opposite is that I have bad hair. You have always been Becky with a good hair, my friend. And if they are hanging out there and people are listening to this and they're trying to choose between better hair growth or your health, you don't have to, because now there's a holistic solution for men that promotes both healthier hair and whole body wellness. Get ahead of thinning hair with NUTRAFOL's whole body approach to hair growth. No drugs, no compromise. I wish I would have found this myself at an early age. NUTRAFOL is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, thickness, and visible scalp coverage. NUTRAFOL's hair growth nutraceuticals go beyond genetics to multi-target the root causes of thinning, including stress, hormones, nutrition, metabolism, aging, and lifestyle through whole body health. Physician formulated using natural medical grade ingredients. NUTRAFOL's drug-free patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. In a clinical study, men showed progressive improvement in their hair growth and thickness after 3 and 6 months. And NUTRAFOL is also trusted and recommended by more than 3,000 top doctors. Eric, just talk about it, man. Your hair is your confidence. Right out of the gate, it's what a lot of guys notice. Guys and girls, boom, what's his hair looking like?
Honestly, the only reason I ever got into the wrestling business was because of my hair.
Come on now.
I had hair like a local small town weatherman.
Yeah.
And Vern Vern was bald too, and he looked at my hair the minute I walked into a meeting with him. I had no intent. I wasn't applying for a job or anything. Didn't think I was ever going to be in the wrestling business. Had no desire to be in the wrestling business. But I had a meeting with Vern Gagne, and Vern Gagne, being bald, took one look at my weatherman hair and said, "Geez, I love that hair, kid. Jeez, oh man. I gotta get me some of that hair. Oh. Kid, what do you do for a living?" "Oh, Vern, I'm a sales manager for a food processor. But I've got this idea I'd like to talk to you about." "Geez, kid, I don't want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about your hair. I need to hire you." You don't know shit. You've never been in the wrestling business. I'm not even sure I remember your last name, but that fucking hair.
That hair.
I need that hair.
Buddy.
That's the only reason I got a job.
Incredible. Look, we talked about it earlier. We want everything to be convenient in life. That's why you need to subscribe, and you're going to receive automatic monthly deliveries, and that way you never miss a dose and you start looking good, my friends. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code 83weeks. That's NUTRAFOL.com/men and enter the promo code 83weeks. That way you're going to save $15 off your first month's subscription. This is their best offer anywhere. and it's only available to U.S. customers for a limited time. Plus, free shipping for every order. That's right. You get $15 off at NUTRAFOL.com/men, spelled NUTRAFOL.com/men. Promo code
83 weeks.
All right, let's a few more questions and we'll get out of here. Eric, Josh Henney says, at E. Bischoff, why didn't the dungeon have a final story to break them up? Seems like Kevin fought Benoit and then it disappeared. Do you remember talking about this at all?
No,
how do we end them?
No, it was when it became apparent that the Dungeon of Doom was over with, there was no way in the world I would have said, yeah, but before we put it into it, why don't we come up with one more chapter? No. Good riddance. See ya. Don't let the door hit you in the ass.
We could have rolled a stone in front of the dungeon and the cave and they can't come out of it. Something. Nope.
Nothing.
Let's just get them out of here.
The best we could hope for is that people would forget about it.
And here we are talking about it 20 years later.
I know. I thought it'd be one of those things that people would finally forget about because there's so much other dumb shit that I've done that we could talk about. But no, this keeps coming up.
Brad Stutz, he tweets in at 83 weeks. Can Eric walk us through the changes to the Yeti as best he can recall? First, he is presumably an abominable snowman, then a mummy. Then by the time World War III rolls around, inexplicably a ninja. Why so many costume character alterations in such a short amount of time? You hit a little bit on it. I know some people were supposed to be the Yeti and they didn't, but what do you remember about all this time?
I don't know why we did that. I don't. And Ron Reis is a good looking guy. You know what I mean? It's not like we're covering him up because he was like homely or shit. I mean, Christ, half the roster would have been undercover. Showed up in tents. Or like you in your Master P rap video.
Yeah, come on.
But I don't know why, because he was a good looking guy and he was very athletic.
See, that was my thought. I met him at one of the Starcast and
right.
I got to work with him. And again, should have known he's the Yeti. He's going to be a big dude. And then he walks in, you're like, holy shit. But super nice guy. And even at his size, at his age, when I met him, still not one of those immobile guys to work around. Like, that's what I was going to ask though. What is his size limiting? And you're saying no.
Not at all. He was athletic like Paul White was athletic. Maybe not quite. I don't know that Ron Reis could do a kip up, but he worked like a 220 pounder. He worked like a guy that was 6'2". He was very, very, very agile and could work, which makes it even odder that, we went to such extremes to cover him up and put him in situations where his work didn't matter. Really, now I can see that. Here's how it probably happened, because when Ron Reis first came in, we had to put him through the power plant, and it's real easy if you've got somebody that's really big and they've only been in the power plant for a month or two, don't really have enough skills yet, even though they're athletic, don't have enough skills yet to go out and have a match, but you could gimmick them up and put them in there as a cartoon character, and that's probably what happened with Ron Reis. And then once you start down that path, it's just easy for people to leave you there. It's like the wrestling version of being typecast.
By the way, in case anybody has not seen him for some reason or kind of wondering, he's over 7 foot. He's well into 300 pounds. And like you mentioned, super athletic, played basketball, went to the University of Cincinnati, went to Santa Clara University. So big, athletic dude, and just fun to be around. He was fun to be around for me as a human.
Super nice guy.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate he got stuck with this ridiculous gimmick because that's how people will remember him. But, you have a conversation with him. He's incredibly bright and personable. You would never imagine that he was a professional wrestler, or a mummy that fucked Hulk Hogan on stage in the middle of the ring.
Well,
or tried to.
I have friends, including mutual friends that Matt Coon included, who talk about one of their surreal moments in life was being in a bathroom in Baltimore wrapping up the YET TAY with toilet paper and going, what am I doing with my life right now?
I
And him just standing there.
I should have
Wrap
gone
me
to college.
Yeah, wrap me up, fellas. Tommy OG61 tweets, do you feel like if you kind of touched on this, if you feel like you were more confident with creative that you would have ended this before it got too far? He also says, whose bright idea was it to put Conan in there? We mentioned he made an appearance. So one, you touched on it. You talked about your transition of observing it and then working to, I have an opinion, as well. So you kind of touched on that.
Yeah, I mean, I wished I would have had a lot more comfort and confidence in the creative process. You know, when I worked for the AWA, one of the reasons that I ended up getting the job as the executive producer in WCW and later executive vice president and then president is because I had a fundamental understanding of almost every aspect of the wrestling business. I started out in syndication, which means you have to understand ad sales, right? I promoted live events. I learned production in my spare time. When I was done doing my day job for Vergania and doing sales and syndication and sponsorships, learned how to do that too. I would stay after at night and watch the shows being post-produced because I want to learn how to do that. I didn't want to do it for a living necessarily, but I wanted to understand how it was done. And I did that with almost every aspect of the business of the wrestling business that I could. Pay-per-view wasn't really a thing for Vern at the time, so I wasn't able to learn anything about that there. But that fundamental background gave me a great foundation to eventually get picked to be the executive producer and later the president of WCW because I understood all the facets of the business, with the exception of the creative side of it. I was never involved. I was never even exposed. I was never even allowed to hear a moment of the conversations that took place in the AWA when it came to creative. And as a result of that, when I got to WCW, I would sit down and talk to a guy by the name of Rob Garner, who is the vice president of sales and syndication at WCW. And 5 minutes after I got hired, I could sit down and have a great conversation with him about sales and syndication because I knew that. I could go down to the control room and sit in on an edit session. And while I might not have been able to actually edit the show because they had different equipment than I was used to, I certainly understood how it was done and could sit in on an edit session and actually contribute because I'd done enough of it. Just fundamentals, nothing fancy, right? But when it came to creative, I had not a zero. And it was my exposure in WCW that gave me the confidence. Eventually, but it took a while. It took a good year and a half before I was even willing to sit down in the room and be a part of the discussion.
Do you remember anything about Conan coming in?
No.
Okay. Matt Godfrey, he hit us up. He's the top guy on 83 weeks. He said, Eric, who was your favorite Dungeon of Doom member? This is like asking your favorite time you've stubbed your toe, but go ahead and let us know.
Or my favorite hemorrhoid. Oh, I remember back about 10 years ago, that was a really bad hemorrhoid. But 2 years ago, oh, that was a bad one. No, I can't. I can't pick one out. I think this ZODIAC because it was so freaking ridiculous. I mean, how do you even say that was ridiculous when you look at the combined ridiculousness of what was the Dungeon of Doom? I don't know, man. It was all bizarre.
I mean, even Hogan's getting his stash shaved off and he's coming out with a sword like everybody.
I think he had to shave the stash off for a movie.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
That was a movie stunt or something. He was going to have to shave it off anyway. And he figured, oh, let's get some heat with it. Like, who gives a fuck? You shave it off his butt there. It's not Samson's ponytail.
It was to us back then, Dan. That's his food.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Tristan Atalano says, he hits us up on ad-free shows. Where was the Dungeon of Doom stuff filmed at? As a kid, it almost gave me Castle Grayskull vibes from He-Man. Do you remember where they shot that?
Yeah, I think they did that all in the our post-production studio in Atlanta.
Wow.
In the CNN Center. If maybe they maybe they went off location for something, once or twice, but I think most of that was done in-house.
Scott Golden, was the Zodiac a nod to the Zodiac Killer? Do you know?
I couldn't
Or is
tell
that
you.
overthinking that?
Yeah, it's probably a coincidence.
Brad
Trust me,
Stan-
there was nobody on that creative team that would go, "Hey, I got an idea. Let's tie this into something real." That conversation was not fucking happening.
Brad Stanton says, "Were you told to ask? We were told to ask you what you were thinking, but isn't trying things what it's all about? Are you surprised at what works and doesn't work?" You kind of hit on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you have to experiment. Look, and you
Yeah.
got to get out of your comfort zone. I mean, you know this as a stand-up comedian. If you just go up there and do material that you're perfectly comfortable doing because you've done it all the time, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
You have to try something new, right? I'm assuming that's true. I'm not a
Yes,
comedian.
100%.
I mean, it's true for musicians. Musicians can't. Anybody that's really good at anything they do pushes that envelope, and sometimes you push too far, or you push it in a direction that you've got to recalibrate, come back and push it a little bit different direction. But sometimes you just fall flat on your face, and it's okay.
Yeah,
That's how you learn. That's how you get better.
it's funny you mentioned that. Of all people, they should be asking somebody else. But I've had people wanting to get into the stand-up comedy business and talk to me and say, any advice? And I always say, go get on stage. There's nothing I can tell you that the crowd won't tell you instantly about you can think you have the funniest joke and premise ever and deliver it on stage and it doesn't hit. Now you got to figure out, is it not funny, or the crowd was bad, or I'm just not delivering it correctly? And same thing with creative. And I've heard Conrad tell many other people, hey man, I want to get into podcasting. What should I do? And Conrad's first line is, go do it. Figure it out. I mean, the biggest hurdle is trying something. And like you said, getting out of your comfort zone. You won't know if it works until you try it.
And I'm going to, and I also probably be controversial, but I also don't care. Elon Musk had a tweet the other day. In fact, Conrad DM'd me with it because Elon's tweet was in essence something that Conrad and I often say to each other when we're talking about trying something is, let's try it. No one's going to go to jail if it doesn't work. No one's going to get sick if it doesn't work. No one's going to die if it doesn't work. But if it does work, we'll do it some more.
Yeah.
But you don't know. If you fear of trying an idea, whether it's a creative idea for wrestling or a movie or a song or a bit or whatever it is, if it's an idea that's in that forms inside of your skull, there's a chance it can be brilliant, and there's a chance that you're the only one that's going to really like it. But you don't know if you don't try. And your experience can help you filter through that process a little bit, so the odds of being successful are better. But it all comes down to having the balls to try, and also recognizing that just because you think something is funny doesn't necessarily mean somebody else is going to think it's funny. And conversely, just because something doesn't get a laugh out of you doesn't mean the audience isn't entertained by it.
Yeah,
It is. Everybody, and it's because of dipshits like Dave Meltzer and people that are like him. And I want to make it clear, I don't think of all people that are in the wrestling reporting business are like Dave Meltzer. He's a unique asshole. He's at the top of the asshole pile. But there's a lot of good, reporters out there, or people that cover wrestling. Wade Keller is one of them. Mike Johnson, PWI, Dave Scheer, PWI. A lot of the team over at Wrestling Inc. are great. There's a lot of good ones out there, and I respect him for what they do. Sean Ross Sapp, controversial, yes. Good at what he does, absolutely. But there are certain people that are just, legitimate idiots, and Dave Meltzer's one of them. But unfortunately, the wrestling media likes to pick things apart because that's what gets responses and that's what gets people attention, right? People clickbait, whatever, and people often criticize ideas because they've never been in a position to have to get paid for good ideas. And until you've been in a business of being paid for good ideas, don't criticize people that do, because you don't know what you're talking about. and anybody can be critical. I do it. I'm guilty of it too. I criticize things that I shouldn't criticize. But when it comes to somebody's idea, I'd rather see somebody come up with something wild and off the hook, crazy, and try it than just do what's safe. Because what's safe gets boring fast.
I mean, I hate to pick apart that brilliant paragraph you just told us, but aren't all assholes unique? They're like snowflakes. They're all a little bit different.
Very good. That's
No two
really
assholes
good.
are alike. This is the best. This is the best question to go out on. Top guy Jeremy. Jeremy Priest says, "Am I the only one who loved Dungeons of Doom?" And
Damn right you are, Jeremy.
yeah, you are. You are, buddy. You've got that title. You, my friend, are a unique asshole. You're the only one that liked Dungeon of Doom. Maybe Kevin Sullivan. Do you think even he likes it now? Or do you think he looks back on it?
Oh, no, I think he likes it. That was better than people give it credit for, brother. If it wouldn't have been for the Dungeon of Doom, brother, there would have not been an NWO, brother. It sounded more like Ming. I don't know.
It did. You went. I was like, man, I don't remember Kevin Sullivan talking like that, but I like it. Before we get out of here, over at adfreeshows.com, that is the place to be. You're going to get 14 podcasts early and ad-free for as low as $9, including 83 weeks and Strictly Business. But there's also a ton of bonus content and experiences waiting for you there, too. Ad-free shows just launched a brand new series called The Book, taking a month-by-month journey through the actual handwritten booking logs of JCP and World Class with David Crockett and David Manning. Conrad also just released the 48th volume of Ask Conrad, where you get to ask him any questions you want. Hacksaw Jim Duggan joined ad-free shows recently for a live Q&A, and members got to do a live watch-along with Jake Roberts. And shameless plug, I'm pretty proud about it, Eric. I thought me and you had a absolutely phenomenal conversation with Raven, with you and him clearing the air.
Yeah, that was great. It was really great, actually. And as a matter of fact, I'm heading to Atlanta this weekend, and I'm going to give Raven a shout and see if he wants to go out and grab a sandwich or something, get caught up.
If you're on ad-free shows and hadn't checked that out, I know you got so much content to create, to listen to. Go watch that. Go listen to it. It was super, super, super intriguing to me to be a part of that. Tons of content, ad-free shows, and like we said, for as low as $9, best deal in the business, Eric.
Absolutely is.
Biggest
bang for your buck in the wrestling biz, brother.
There it is. Like, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating on all platforms, wherever you're consuming it. Twitter handles, he's at E. Bischoff. I'm at the Casio Kid. Of course, the show at 83 weeks. YouTube, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications at youtube.com/83 weeks. Eric, thank you for letting me sit in here. Next week, Conrad should be back, and the man who helped write Grateful with you, Guy Evans, will be joining you next week on 83 weeks.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
It's
awesome.
going to be a fun little time for you, buddy.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it. Guy is a wonderful human being. Just patience of a saint, working with me on this book for the last 8 months or whatever it's been. Patience of a saint. That's all I got to say.
And with that, tell them how they can get the book if they're interested.
BischoffBook.com. It'll take you right to Amazon, and the book will be on its way.
BischoffBook.com. For Mr. Eric Bischoff, I'm Casio. Conrad, thanks for letting me pitch in. Everybody, thanks for consuming this wherever you're doing it. We appreciate you. Until next time, it's 83 weeks with Eric Bischoff.